Chapter 2901. Yixian Palace. In this story, Imperial concubine Ro was famous for being amiable and kind. But because her 8th brother had died a few days ago, her mood was gloomy and she did not eat or drink. Luo Qingchen followed behind eunuch Wang into Yixian Palace. Just as she stepped into the hall, the fragrance of lavender filled her nose. Looking around, there was a sea of purple that was beautiful beyond compare. Xiang Tsao, the person that imperial concubine Ro wanted, has been brought here. Walking over was a palace maid wearing golden brocade. Her eyes were round and she looked very spirited. I've troubled eunuch Wang. Xiang Tsao looked at Luo Qingchen and said, "Come in. Imperial concubine Ro is waiting for you." Yes. There was sandalwood burning in the hall, giving people a refreshing feeling. Xiang Tsao saluted and said, "Your Highness, the person has been brought here. This servant greets Your Highness Imperial concubine Ro." On the way over, Luo Qingchen had made some rough calculations. Although the original owner had helped Imperial concubine Li, she had definitely offended Imperial concubine Ro to a certain extent. But it had already been a while since the original owner had been sent to the laundry department. If Imperial concubine Ro wanted to cause trouble for her, she probably would not have waited that long. After all, she was currently just a low-level palace maid. There was no need for it, nor was there any meaning. In that case, there was only one reason why Imperial concubine Ro had summoned her today. "I heard that this one's palace maid appeared in the Imperial garden last night." Imperial concubine Ro took a sip of tea and said, "It was you, right?" Luo Qingchen kneeled and said, replying, "Your Highness, it was indeed this servant." "Impudent!" Xiang Tsao immediately said in a loud voice. "You are clearly not a palace maid of Yixian Palace. Why are you deceiving them? Do you know that by doing this, you are not only deceiving the Empress, you are also deceiving the current emperor?" "Your Highness, please forgive me." Luo Qingchen's eyes narrowed slightly as she said in a very calm voice, "This servant was originally a palace maid of the laundry department. Yesterday, someone wanted to frame this servant, so I escaped in a panic and came to the Imperial garden." "You're quite honest." Imperial concubine Ro's eyebrows slightly raised. Looking at her, she said, "Get up first." "Thank you, Your Highness." "Who else did you meet in the Imperial garden last night?" Replying to Nyang Nyang, Luo Qingchen raised her eyes and said, "This servant also met official Song." Consort Ro looked at her calm eyes and the corners of her lips curled into an extremely faint smile. "It seems like you know why this consort had you come, but why didn't you explain yourself at all? Are you not afraid that this consort will punish you or directly tell His Majesty?" "This servant is afraid." Luo Qingchen lowered her eyes and said, "But this servant doesn't dare to deceive Your Highness. If Your Highness knows about this matter and this servant still insists on explaining, wouldn't this servant really be concealing it and not reporting it?" "You have a sharp tongue." Vanilla snorted softly and said, "If you didn't know that Her Majesty was kind-hearted, how could you be so honest? What a hypocrite!" This servant does not agree with Miss Xiangtsao's words. Luo Qingchen pursed her lips and looked at Imperial concubine Ro, saying, "Regardless of whether the one asking me today is Imperial concubine Ro or a concubine from another palace, this servant's answer is the same. You, Xiangtsao, Your Highness." Xiangtsao pursed her lips and said coquettishly, "This girl clearly knows that Your Highness is kind-hearted, so she purposely said this. She met official Song late at night. Why doesn't Your Highness pursue this matter? In the Imperial Palace, the servants do not dare to admire His Majesty." Chapter 2902. Vanilla was naturally no exception. Perhaps admiration was not the same as liking, but when she knew that Song official was in the Imperial garden late at night with a palace maid from the laundry bureau, she felt even more upset. In her heart, the palace maid in front of her was not worthy of Song Nanmo. No, perhaps it should be said that she did not even have the right to speak to Song Nanmo. "Vanilla, Consort Ro looked at her and said, "You can leave first." "Nyang nyang, leave." Vanilla pouted. She was angry, but she could only bow and say, "Yes." This consort already knew about this matter. After all, this consort's Yixian palace does not have a palace maid named Luo Qingchen. She looked deeply at Luo Qingchen and said, "This imperial palace is like a cage with eyes. No matter what you do, someone will know. This servant understands. Originally, this consort did not expect you to tell the truth. This consort wanted to punish you with 20 horses and have you return to the laundry bureau." Consort Ro laughed softly and said, "But I did not expect you to be so honest. This consort does not know how to punish you." Luo Qingchen raised her eyebrows. Her eyes lit up as she said, "How about Nyang Nyang leave this servant in Yixian Palace? Leave you here." A faint light flashed through Consort Ro's eyes as she said, "You are a palace made from the laundry bureau. If you come to Yixian Palace, wouldn't it be a reward and not a punishment?" "Nyang Nyang is wrong." Luo Qingchen nodded and explained, "Although this servant works from dawn to dusk in the laundry bureau every day, and is even a level lower than ordinary palace maids, as long as I know my place, there is no danger to my life." After paving the road for so long, she had finally reached the right track. Luo Qingchen expressed that the palace intrigue suited her to a certain extent, but it also did not suit her. It suited her because she was smart enough and knew how to leave a way out for herself. It did not suit her because of her temper. She had always been straightforward. And here, if she wanted to say something, she had to do a series of foreshadowing. It was commonly known as a plan. "You mean that your life will be in danger if you come to this consort's Yixian Palace?" Consort Ro put down her cup and frowned slightly. She looked at Luo Qingchen and asked, "What exactly do you want to say? Since this servant came to Yixian Palace, this servant must have made some contributions to Yixian Palace. Your Highness should know that this servant was Consort Li's palace made before being punished to the laundry bureau." Luo Qingchen frowned and said calmly, "It's about Brother Yaden. Maybe it's not an accident." Thud! The sound of a teacup falling to the ground could be heard. Vanilla immediately rushed in and asked, "Your Highness, are you all right?" Consort Ro's face was abnormally pale and her hands were trembling uncontrollably. A few months ago, Concubine Ro's only elder brother, Fengji, had caught a cold. Fengji was born less than 3 months ago. Catching a cold could be a big or small matter, but with the imperial physicians of the entire Forbidden City taking turns to treat him, his condition had stabilized and gradually improved. However, one night, 8th elder brother Fengji's condition took a turn for the worse. He had a high fever and in the end, he did not make it. Due to 8th elder brother's young age, the diagnosis of the imperial physicians of the imperial hospital was often uncertain. Consort Ro did not speak, and neither did Luo Qingchen. Vanilla looked very anxious. She looked at Consort Ro and then looked at Luo Qingchen. She then paused and said, "Someone, drag this palace maid from the laundry bureau away and lock her up. Wait for your Highness to deal with her. Wait, Your Highness, this person can't be left alive." Vanilla said angrily, "If your Highness feels that it's inappropriate for her to stay in Yixian Palace, then send her back to the laundry bureau." Someone. Chapter 2903. Hearing this, Xiang Tsao immediately knelt and said, "This servant has spoken out of turn. Your Imperial Highness, please forgive this servant." Consort Ro waved her hand and turned her gaze back to Luo Qingchen. "What you just said, was it true?" This servant does not dare to be completely certain, but after being at Consort Li's side for so long, this servant has some clues. Luo Qingchen pursed her lips and said, "As long as your Imperial Highness gives Qingchen time, Qingchen will definitely be able to give your Imperial Highness an answer." "All right, this consort believes you." Consort Ro looked at Xiang Tsao and said, "Go to the laundry department and say that Yixian Palace wishes to keep a palace maid." "Your Imperial Highness." Xiang Tsao wanted to say something, but she knew that she had already made Consort Ro unhappy, so she could only pout and say, "This servant will do it right away." Consort Ro nodded and did not forget to remind her, "After you're done, go to the Department of Internal Affairs to report. Your Imperial Highness, do not worry. This servant knows what to do." Xiang Cao bowed and turned to leave. When she passed by Luo Qingchen, she did not forget to stomp her foot and say, "Don't be so smug. Xiang Cao. This servant will go now, Your Imperial Highness." Consort Ro looked at Xiang Cao's departing figure and helplessly shook her head. This consort has doted on her too much, causing her to be a bit willful. "I can see that Your Imperial Highness is kind." Luo Qingchen blinked and said, "Your Imperial Highness, do not worry. Qingchen has indeed done some unspeakable things for Consort Li in the past, but this servant has a balance in her heart. This servant will not do anything that would harm someone's life. If you suspect someone, don't use them. If you use someone, don't suspect them." Consort Ro looked at her and said, "This consort has summoned you to Yixian Palace today not to investigate the past. I'm guessing that even if this servant did not tell Your Imperial Highness the truth today, Your Imperial Highness would at most severely reprimand me and send me back to the laundry department." Luo Qingchen faintly raised the corners of her lips and said, "You wouldn't give this servant 20 strokes. Qingchen, since you've entered Yixian Palace, you must know that everything you say and do in the future represents this palace and Yixian Palace to a certain extent." Consort Ro looked at her gently and said, "In the future, don't casually guess what your master is thinking, understood?" Qingchen understands. Vanilla, who had returned from the Imperial Household Department, had arranged for her to stay in a room that was the furthest away from the main palace. It was the most remote room. Although it didn't look messy, it was covered in dust. "Although I don't know what kind of bewitching potion you gave Her Highness Consort Ro, I am very good at judging people." Vanilla looked at her and snorted. "I know very well what kind of person you were when you were in Shiha Palace. You can deceive Her Highness, but you can't deceive me." When Luo Qingchen heard this, her lips curled into a smile as she said, "You mean to say that Her Highness is even more foolish than you?" "You?" Vanilla pointed at her nose and said, "I never said that. Don't slander me. Her Highness is kind, but I'm not. You're on your own." The moment her voice fell, Vanilla waved her sleeves and turned to leave. After spending an entire afternoon, Luo Qingchen finally tidied up the room. She also made a few temporary racks for hanging clothes. However, since Vanilla didn't like her so much right now, she definitely wouldn't help her make clothes in the embroidery workshop. She would have to do this herself. After all, she was now a palace maid of Yixian Palace. If she still wore the clothes of the laundry department, it would be inappropriate. On the way to the embroidery workshop, Luo Qingchen was still thinking about Eighth Brother. Little did she know that she was stopped by Song Nanmo. Immediately after, there were sighs from the surroundings. Chapter 2904. Official Song is so handsome. Who is Official Song talking to? Who wants to seduce him? Oh, look at that dress. It's a palace maid from the laundry department. Seeing a lowly servant like her, she still has the nerve to talk to Official Song. Luo Qingchen froze for a moment. She slightly looked up and saw Song Nanmo's handsome face. The light of the setting sun shined on his chiseled face, making him look very good. Is there a reason Official Song has stopped this servant? Although Luo Qingchen did not know why Imperial Concubine Ro had come looking for her, it was very clear that if Song Nanmo had not been in the Imperial Garden last night, Imperial Concubine Ro would not have summoned her today. Song Nanmo saw that there were too many people around, so he gently pulled her wrist and said, "Come with me." Mo Lanting Pavilion. It was located in the southwest corner of the palace. It was close to the cold palace and very few people passed by it. Song Nanmo looked at her clear eyes and slightly knitted his brows as he said, "What happened last night in the Imperial Garden was told to elder sister by someone close to me." Hearing that elder sister had summoned you to Yixian Palace, I hurried over. Could it be that official Song feels that he has implicated this servant? Luo Qingchen gently smiled and said, official Song's actions are very Mary Sue. According to the memories of the original owner, Song Nanmo was an upright, humble, courteous, cultured person who could see the big picture. This kind of personality on a woman was probably the embodiment of 1,000-year Mary Sue. Although Luo Qingchen did not understand Song Nanmo, him coming to find her at this time was probably proof that the rumors were not false. What does Miss mean? Song Nanmo looked away and said, You're thinking too much. I just don't understand how you made elder sister agree to let you stay in Yixian Palace. Although Song Nanru was kind and gentle, Luo Qingchen was once imperial concubine Li's person. Even if she had a good heart, she would not let this kind of palace maid stay in Yixian Palace. If official Song really wants to know, why don't you just ask imperial concubine Ro? Luo Qingchen crossed her arms and said, You stopping me to ask me is proof that imperial concubine Ro did not tell you. Song Nanmo was slightly startled. His deep eyes flickered with a faint light as bright as the stars. Vanilla said that you're smart and quick-witted. Looks like he was right. Song Nanmo's lips curled into a faint smile. Last night, did you escape to the Imperial Garden because of Wang Zhong? Lord Song, there's no need to be so tactful. Luo Qingchen covered her mouth and giggled. Vanilla wouldn't say that I'm smart. She probably said that I'm full of tricks, or at the very least, I'm a sharp-tongued person. Am I right? She would never believe that Vanilla would praise her for being smart. After all, she could see the malice in Vanilla's eyes. As for Wang Zhong, Luo Qingchen's eyebrows trembled slightly as she continued, It seems that Lord Song has already investigated everything. No. Song Nanmo looked at her faint smile and his eyes flickered slightly. After a few seconds, he said softly, Wang Zhong has already been punished by the Imperial Household Department. Everyone said that he is crazy and has a strange hobby. Lord Song didn't believe it, right? Luo Qingchen suddenly felt some appreciation for Song Nanmo. It was not because he was the male lead, but because he had all the advantages that all men had. Among them, he was smart. When Granny Li opened the woodshed, although there was only Wang Zhong, there were shredded clothes on the ground. Song Nanmo looked at Luo Qingchen's eyes and said, Clothes can be shredded, but they can't be shredded like a sword, but there was no sword in the woodshed. Chapter 2905. I have no proof. Song Nanmo's brows moved slightly as he said, but Qingchen dares to say that she has no other motives for approaching Consort Ro. Of course there is. Luo Qingchen pursed her lips and said, The days in the laundry bureau are naturally not as good as the days in the Edict Palace. Even though I am only a palace maid, I still have to find a way out for myself. Have you always been so sincere when you speak? Song Nanmo lowered his eyes slightly as though he was a bit embarrassed. Official Song did not use the word sincere well, Luo Qingchen thought and said, You should have said directly. Song Nanmo pursed his lips and said, Qingchen Gunyang, how did you manage to get Jie to stay by your side? Can you tell me? Official Song says it as though I will harm Consort Ro. Luo Qingchen pouted and said, I am measuring the heart of a gentleman with my own mean measure. I did not mean that. Hearing this, Song Nanmo's ears turned slightly red in an instant. Luo Qingchen actually felt that his shy appearance was very cute. She laughed softly and said, I can tell you, but I have a condition. Such a good opportunity, if she did not flirt now, when would she wait? What condition? In the next second, Luo Qingchen's gaze landed on the jade pendant at his waist. She reached out and took the jade pendant from his body. It was a high-quality mutton fat jade, pure white and flawless. The character Mo was carved in the center of the jade, as though it was very suitable for Song Nanmo. Qingchen Gunyang. Song Nanmo's speed was very fast. He reacted almost in the next second and reached out to take the jade pendant. Unfortunately, Luo Qingchen was one step faster than him. She carefully examined the jade pendant and said, "Official Song, why are you so nervous? Is this a gift from someone you love?" "No." He looked away, his eyes as deep as ink with a faint light in them. He said softly, I don't have anyone I love." For some reason, the assistant minister of the Ministry of Works, the man that all the palace maids in the imperial palace worshipped. At this moment, she actually felt that he was a little shy in front of her. "Let's use this jade pendant as a condition." Luo Qingchen gently shook it and said, "I don't think Song Darren will suffer a loss." Is it very difficult for Lord Song? If Miss Qingchen likes jade pendants, can I give you another one? Tomorrow I will find some better mutton fat jade for you to choose from." When Song Nanmo said this, his ears were flushed red. Luo Qingchen actually didn't quite understand what he was shy about, but she decisively nodded and said, "Sure. But before that, I'll keep it safe for you. Otherwise, what if you go back on your word?" Song Nanmo blinked twice and said, "All right, then I'll leave it with Miss Qingchen for now. So can you tell me now, what method did you use to get my sister to allow you to stay in Yixian Palace? Before I say this answer, Official Song should at least believe me." Luo Qingchen raised an eyebrow and said, "Otherwise, it's useless to say it." Song Nanmo's eyes darkened. He looked at her seriously and said, "Since I asked you personally, I naturally believe you." In fact, he also felt that he was strange. Last night in the Imperial Garden, he had instantly exposed the palace maid's words. But when the Emperor appeared, he couldn't help but inexplicably want to help her out. This feeling was very strange. He was even scared by himself. After so many years in the Imperial Palace, he had seen countless beautiful concubines and palace maids, but he had never felt anything between men and women. Chapter 2906. The reason why Imperial Concubine Ro agreed to let me stay in Yixian Palace was because of eighth brother. Luo Qingchen looked around before walking forward and saying, "Eighth brother's death was not an accident." Song Nanmo was shocked and said, "What did you say?" Little brother had not died from an illness. She was roughly 100% certain, because when she was still Imperial Concubine Li's trusted aide, she had heard her mention this before. On that day, eighth brother's condition suddenly took a turn for the worse in Yixian Palace. The imperial physician that had checked his pulse at the beginning suddenly disappeared. Very few people knew about this matter. The reason why Imperial Concubine Li knew was because Imperial Physician Xia was a relative of her family. But because the relationship between their families was not good, even though they worked in the palace, they did not interact with each other. Even though she knew that Imperial Physician Xia had gone missing, it was her father who told her. This allowed her to be at ease. It was possible that someone in the Forbidden City wanted to harm her. Imperial Concubine Li was a very thoughtful person. In her eyes, this matter was very important, thus she sent Luo Qingchen to take a look. At that time, eighth brother had not died from an illness, but after an imperial physician was changed, eighth brother's condition took a turn for the worse. In the end, there was no way to reverse the situation. This matter was too strange in the eyes of the original owner. After all, it had happened too recently. In addition to this, Imperial Physician Xia was found to have committed suicide in a bush 3 li outside the city. It was inevitable that people would feel a bit suspicious. Imperial Concubine Li believed that the culprit wanted to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, but who knew that Imperial Concubine Li had always been very cold to her relatives. Thus she could only give up to prevent herself from being exposed. After Song Nanmo finished listening to Luo Qingchen's story, his heart was tightly knit. Eighth brother's matter had caused his elder sister to be devastated, but fortunately, this was only her first child. The Emperor doted on her even more for the sake of their old relationship. Over the past few days, she gradually recovered. But Song Nanmo was clear that Feng Ji would forever be a thorn in imperial concubine Ro's heart. It was a thorn that could never be pulled out. But at that time, there was nothing wrong with the prescription that imperial physician Zhou wrote. Song Nanmo looked at her and said, "The prince is sick. If the imperial physician dared to make a fuss about it, that would be a crime that would implicate the entire family. There might not be a problem with the prescription." Luo Qingchen looked up and said, "But whether or not it was different from the prescription that imperial physician Xia wrote, that is something that we do not know. So you suspect, this is a long-term plan. I'll go to the imperial hospital tomorrow. Imperial Dr. Xia must have a record of the prescription given to Brother Ba at the beginning. I want to see the difference between the two. I'll go with you." A look of admiration flashed across Song Nanmo's eyes. He looked at her and said, "If Feng Ji was really killed by someone, I will not let him go. So Lord Song wants to join my camp?" Luo Qingchen extended her hand and said, "Welcome to fight alongside me." Song Nanmo was slightly stunned and did not reach out his hand. There was no such alliance in ancient times. The next second, Luo Qingchen smiled foolishly and said, "It's okay, it's just a friendly gesture. Men and women shouldn't touch each other. You can't hold hands." He lowered his eyes again and said, "I still have to go to the Ministry of Works to take care of some matters. Go to the Imperial Household Department to get your clothes and return to Yixian Palace as soon as possible." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around to leave. The next second, Luo Qingchen immediately grabbed his sleeve and said, "Lord Song, the direction of the Ministry of Works should be this way. That should be the direction of the Cold Palace." Song Nanmo immediately retracted his hand and hurriedly said, "I'm sorry. I went the wrong way." In the blink of an eye, he walked out of her line of sight with quick step. Luo Qingchen was still in the same place. She couldn't help but chuckle. Chapter 2907. It seemed that she had inadvertently walked into Song Nanmo's special zone. In the past, the male leads she had met were domineering, gentle, black-bellied, arrogant, everything. But she had never met such a pure person. She was completely blank when it came to emotions. He was clearly so outstanding, but he was still a modest young master. In this vast imperial palace, the front court and rear court were filled with scheming and scheming. Song Nanmo's appearance was like the bright moon in the starry sky. So special, the next morning, Luo Qingchen woke up early and went to the main hall to pay respects to Consort Ro. Although she didn't like this feeling, she still had to abide by the rules of the palace. "His Majesty is inside. What do you want to do?" Vanilla stopped her in an instant, her tone and attitude very bad. Luo Qingchen frowned slightly and said, "I came to pay respects to Her Majesty, but you stopped me outside. Then don't blame me for not understanding etiquette." "Humph," Vanilla snorted and said, "I know what kind of person you are. There's no need to put on an act in front of me." When the other young maidservants heard this, they all looked at each other in dismay. Vanilla relied on Consort Ro's favor in Yixian Palace and was indeed arrogant and despotic. Normally, she would bully people quite a bit. Thus, no one dared to say anything, but they also didn't want to say anything in agreement with her. The attitude of a petty person. Luo Qingchen nodded slightly, a cold light flashing through her eyes. Vanilla was stunned, then she looked at her with a face full of anger. She raised her hand and was about to slap her. Luo Qingchen snorted coldly. She wanted to catch her wrist, but she didn't expect Song Nanmo to be one step ahead of her. "Vanilla, what are you doing?" Song Nanmo frowned slightly, a reproachful light flashing through his eyes. "Song. Official Song." Vanilla's eyes instantly reddened, tears about to fall. It was as if she had a stomach full of grievances, but had no way to vent them. If elder sister knew that you bullied a new palace maid like this, she would definitely be angry. Song Nanmo let go of her wrist, a trace of coldness in his eyes. Vanilla immediately bowed and said, "This servant knows his mistake, Song Nanmo did not respond. Instead, he looked at Luo Qingchen and said, "Qingchen, come with me." Song Nanmo could clearly feel that when his eyes fell on Luo Qingchen, they would become especially gentle. Furthermore, it was accompanied by rapid heartbeat, rapid breathing, and blushing ears. Hiss! All the palace maids present sucked in a breath of cold air. Vanilla's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. Song Nanmo was Consort Ro's younger brother and the Emperor's close friend. The Emperor had long allowed him to enter and leave the harem as he pleased. But in fact, every time he came to the harem, he would cause a great commotion. After all, he was the most handsome man in the Forbidden City. However, he never stopped walking. Even when he came to Yixian Palace to talk to Xiang Cao or the other palace maids, he would ask them to inform him first. He didn't seem to be interested in the matters between men and women. Even Consort Ro would often tease him, saying that he didn't know how lucky he was. But now, Luo Qingchen came to Yixian Palace on the second day, and Song Nanmo took her away alone. This was a situation that had never happened before. Okay. Even if she was surrounded by hateful and jealous gazes, the corners of her mouth couldn't help but raise a faint smile. Although this feeling was unintentional and meaningless, it didn't mean anything. She didn't know why, but she inexplicably felt a little sweet, as if Song Nanmo had given her candy. Chapter 2908. Official song is up early today. Luo Qingchen followed him and broke the silence. He gave a gentle nod and said, "I was thinking about this last night, so I didn't sleep well." Actually, he wasn't just thinking about this matter. But he could only say this out loud. Luo Qingchen blinked twice and said, "So you came here early in the morning?" "Yes." Song Nanmo slightly knit his brows and said, "I went to the Imperial Hospital just now and the eunuch gave me the key. In a while, we can compare Dr. Xia's prescription and Dr. Zhou's prescription." It had to be said, Song Nanmo was a perfect person. He had actually pushed this matter to a white-hot stage so quickly. He was really a person who could shine. Luo Qingchen couldn't help curling her lip. There was an inexplicable sense of security around him. It was like even if the sky fell down, as long as she was by his side, she didn't need to be afraid of anything. The Imperial Hospital's archives. There were 2 prescriptions on the table. On the left was Dr. Xia, who was already dead, and on the right was Dr. Zhou, who was still in the Imperial Hospital. The 2 prescriptions are basically the same. Luo Qingchen compared them and muttered, "White flower snake grass, dandelion, licorice root, poria cocos, wild chrysanthemum, shantou root, tiankue seed. Wait a minute." Song Nanmo compared them at the same time. Dr. Zhou's prescription has an extra Sephora flavescence. Eighth brother's body was very weak at the time, so Dr. Zhou gave him an extra Sephora flavescence. Luo Qingchen took a deep breath and said with knit brows, "There is no problem with the prescription." "You?" Song Nanmo heard her confident tone and asked in a surprised voice, "You're proficient in medicine?" Luo Qingchen's eyes were still on the 2 prescriptions as she casually replied, "I know a little." Song Nanmo looked at her face with deep concentration. It was like at this moment, his eyes were filled with her. Ding, affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 20%. The system's sudden notification made her jump in fright. The moment she raised her eyes, she directly met Song Nanmo's deep eyes. In the next second, he immediately looked to the side and slowly said, Since there is no problem with the prescription, does it mean that Imperial Dr. Zhou is innocent?" In fact, Luo Qingchen knew that Song Nanmo was just casually finding a topic to ease the tension between them. But this topic was particularly bad. There must be a problem with Imperial Dr. Zhou. This was something that everyone with a discerning eye knew. How could Song Nanmo not know? "What do you think?" Luo Qingchen deliberately teased. "Song Darren is so smart, why are you still asking me?" Song Nanmo tidied up the prescription and changed the topic. If eighth elder brother was really harmed by someone, then the bigger problem should be the food that Fengji ate that day. Or it can't be said to be a bigger problem. Luo Qingchen's right fingertips gently tapped on the table and said, "It's a problem of the two complementing each other. Go back to Yixian Palace first and tell sister about this." Song Nanmo looked into her eyes and said, "I'll check the food that Fengji ate that day." Chapter 2909. Song Nanmo froze for a moment. His eyes flickered, and after a few seconds he said, "I forgot." When Luo Qingchen heard this, she suddenly said, "Then I'll leave official Song's jade pendant with me for now. I'll return it to you when official Song brings the jade pendant to me." After a long time, he looked to the side and said with pursed lips, "All right." Yixian Palace. The moment Luo Qingchen entered the palace, she was stopped by Xiang Cao. She looked at her with an overbearing expression and said, "You've just entered Yixian Palace and you're already slacking off. Do you really think this is a charity hall?" Luo Qingchen's cold eyes narrowed. She looked at her and said, "I was just about to report something to Consort Ro, and you stopped me. Do you really think you're the master of Yixian Palace?" "You!" Xiang Cao couldn't stand the counterattack, and her face instantly turned red. She pointed at Luo Qingchen's nose and said, "You're not slandering me. I never said that." "I don't know if you said it or not," Luo Qingchen sneered and said, "but your ability to turn right into wrong is unparalleled. Has Qingchen returned?" When Consort Ro called her name, Xiang Cao's expression became even uglier. The palace maid Susu hurriedly walked over and said, "Qingchen, Her Highness wants you to go in." "I know." Luo Qingchen raised her right hand and pushed away Xiang Cao's arm that was blocking her and said, "Excuse me." Xiang Cao angrily glared at her and stomped her foot, saying, "Just you wait, I'll tell Her Highness the Empress that you're slacking off." As she said this, she wanted to follow Luo Qingchen into the inner room to see Consort Ro. Little did she know that Susu would directly stop her. "Susu, what are you doing? Do you also want to step on my head?" "No." Susu timidly took a step back and angrily said, "Her Highness said to let Qingchen go in alone." Xiang Cao was shocked and said in disbelief, "What?" In Yixian Palace, Consort Ro doted on her the most. No matter how bad her temper was, Consort Ro almost never punished her. Of it was precisely because of this that she was able to do certain things with ease. "Sister Xiang Cao, this is Her Majesty's order," Susu said in a low voice. "This servant doesn't dare to disobey, tsk, tisk." Luo Qingchen looked at the resentful Vanilla, and her lips curled into a faint sneer. She didn't say another word, but the exchange of gazes already represented her absolute victory. In the inner chamber, Luo Qingchen knelt down and bowed. "This servant greets Imperial Concubine Ro." "There's no need for that." Consort Ro shook her head and said, "Just be polite like them." "Yes, Your Highness." Consort Ro gently nodded. Looking into her eyes, she asked, "You went to the Imperial Hospital with Nan Mo this morning, right?" "Yes, Your Highness." Luo Qingchen's brows twitched slightly as she said, "There's already some progress in the investigation that I promised Nyang Yang." "That's good." Consort Ro frowned slightly and said, "You and Nan Mo, although this servant is now a palace maid of Yixian Palace, it's naturally not easy to go in and out of the Imperial Hospital to look through the records." Luo Qingchen said in a low voice, "Moreover, it's easy to alert the enemy by beating the grass." "You mean that Fengji really was killed by someone?" When Consort Ro heard this, her eyes instantly turned red. Why was she so weak that she couldn't protect the child after giving birth to him, and let him be killed in her own palace? Chapter 2910. Okay. Consort Ro bit her lips and slammed her trembling right hand heavily on the table. "I'll give you all the rights to investigate. If Fengji is really harmed by someone, I won't let him go even if I die." "Your Highness, please calm down." Luo Qingchen frowned and said, "This is a serious matter. If the prince is murdered in the Forbidden City, It will be a serious crime that will implicate the whole family. You mean, the person who wants to kill eighth brother must be of high status. Luo Qingchen's eyebrows moved slightly. If we can't succeed in one fell swoop, I'm afraid that not only will we not be able to avenge eighth brother, but your highness will also be targeted. Then what should we do? Consort Ro looked at Luo Qingchen's eyes and said, I believe you. From the first time I saw you, I had a strange sense of trust. So even if the palace maids spread rumors about your purpose of coming to Yixian Palace, I didn't believe it. Thank you for your trust, your highness. Luo Qingchen took a deep breath and said, Lord Song is also very concerned about eighth brother, so I took the initiative to tell him. It doesn't matter. My brother is very smart. He will only help you and not hinder you. Qingchen understands. Luo Qingchen's eyebrows trembled slightly. Lord Song has already investigated eighth brother's diet. I want to see eighth brother's residence. Feng Zhi's residence is next to mine. After he left, it was a mess. The emperor was afraid that I would think of him when I saw it, so he put up a seal. No one can enter or leave. When Consort Ro said this, her eyes became even redder. Every time she thought of eighth brother, her heart felt like it was being twisted. Your Highness, please allow me to enter eighth brother's residence. Luo Qingchen raised her eyebrows slightly and said, This is very important. Consort Ro hesitated for a long time before saying, Okay, but try not to let others find out. Qingchen understands. Eighth brother's residence was next to Consort Ro's residence, but it was covered with seals. Luo Qingchen quietly went in and carefully investigated. The room was not messy, nor was it dusty. She looked inside and out and finally set her eyes on the candlelight. He didn't find anything special, but it was clean, abnormally clean. It seemed that the person behind this was extremely meticulous. All the evidence had been cleaned up. However, sometimes, the more nervous and deliberate one was, the easier it was to leave traces behind. Luo Qingchen squatted down and found that even the surrounding carpet had been replaced with a new one. In order to prevent the palace from catching fire, there was no open fire in the palace. It was impossible to burn such a large carpet. At the same time, it was even more impossible for the person who did this to leave the carpet in the palace. Could it have been sent out of the palace? Luo Qingchen frowned slightly. Little Ah Guo had not passed away for a long time. If they went out of the palace to investigate, they should be able to find out where the carpet was. After all, if someone deliberately changed the carpet, it meant that the original carpet must have left evidence behind. Little did she know that just as she was deep in thought, someone grabbed her hand and pulled her in the direction of that person. Luo Qingchen was stunned for a moment. She was about to jump away when she saw a face that was so beautiful that it seemed to glow. Come out quickly. This was probably the first time Song Nanmo looked directly at her and spoke. His eyebrows were tightly knitted with a touch of worry. Chapter 29:11. How can you be so bold? Song Nanmo furrowed his brows as he looked at her. How dare you remove the seal that was personally put up by the emperor? Do you know that you will be beheaded? From the beginning to the end, Luo Qingchen looked at him with a cute and harmless expression. After a while, she said, Lord Song, the news of me seducing you has spread like wildfire in the palace. Now that you're grabbing my wrist like this, I won't be able to clear my name even if I jump into the Yellow River. Ding, affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 30%. In the next second, Song Nanmo nervously let go of his hand and looked away. I'm sorry, I was rude. Actually, Song Nanmo didn't know what was wrong with him. He was modest and courteous towards the admiration of the palace maids and the appreciation of the daughters of the princes and ministers. He had never overstepped his boundaries, but now, facing this little palace maid in front of him, he couldn't control his emotions. It was as if the thoughts in the depths of his heart made him unable to control his actions. Oh, so it's like this. Luo Qingchen slightly raised her eyebrows, the corner of her mouth raised into a faint smile. I thought that Lord Song held my hand just now because you like me? At this moment, Song Nanmo abruptly nodded his head and looked deeply at her with his pitch-black eyes. Luo Qingchen blinked, and he blinked as well. Then, he cleared his throat and changed the topic. I checked Feng Zhi's diet that day. Everything else was the same as usual, but there were dried fruits and candied fruit. Dried fruits? Luo Qingchen slightly frowned. What kind of dried fruits? Durian dried fruit. Song Nanmo looked at her worried expression and sighed. I know what you're thinking. Although there's no benefit to eating durian dried fruits and bitter ginseng, it won't take little Aji's life. But on the day when there were more dried fruits and bitter ginseng, little Aji's condition took a turn for the worse. Luo Qingchen slightly nodded. It's definitely not that simple. Song Nanmo's eyes lit up as he said, You mean that maybe it's not just the two that complement each other? Just now, I found that the candlesticks in little elder brother's bedroom were wiped very clean, and even the carpet on the ground was changed. Luo Qingchen thought for a while and said, I have to go out of the palace and go to Lulakang to look for this carpet. Little Aji's room is usually lit with red sandalwood incense. What do you think is wrong? Song Nanmo's eyebrows trembled as he said, It's not safe for you to leave the palace alone. I'll go with you. No, I'll go alone. Luo Qingchen looked at Song Nanmo and said, Now that we are investigating this matter so frequently, it will definitely make the perpetrator nervous. He will definitely take action. You can stay in the Forbidden City and protect Her Majesty. But, Lord Song, I'll leave the rest to you. Luo Qingchen took a step forward and said, Be careful of Xiangcao. Last night, I saw her communicating with a palace made from the Flying Flower Palace. The Empress? Shoo! Luo Qingchen made a gesture and said, There's no evidence at the moment. If it's really the Empress, it'll be more difficult to avenge little Ago. A life for a life. Murdering the imperial heir is a serious crime. Song Nanmo's eyes became cold at this moment. She had seen him so many times since she came here, but this was the first time she saw him show such an expression. In public, he was an upright person. Naturally, he couldn't stand the murder of his youngest son. In private, Feng Zhi was his nephew after all. Chapter 29:12. Don't worry. Luo Qingchen shrugged and said with a faint smile, Since I volunteered to come to Yixian Palace, an imperial concubine, Ro has kindly taken me in, I will definitely repay her. If you leave the palace alone, I should. His words wavered slightly. It's not appropriate. I'll send someone to go with you. No need, there are too many people. Luo Qingchen shook her head. Just wait for me to come back. As soon as her voice fell, she turned and walked towards Imperial Concubine Ro's room. Song Nanmo panicked, and did not control his emotions well. Looking at her back, he shouted, Qingchen. Luo Qingchen pursed her lips and a smile that was difficult to hide appeared on her lips. Turning around, she asked, What is it? I'll wait for you to come back. Song Nanmo's brows furrowed, and he said with a heavy expression, Come back safely. Luo Qingchen gently nodded with a warm smile. At the same time, Flying Flower Palace. Palace maid Qinglan said while serving tea, Your Highness, Imperial Concubine Ro already has suspicions about Eighth Brother's world. What should we do next? What should we do? The Empress picked up the teacup and took a sip. Back then, everything was done cleanly. There is no need to worry now. Without any evidence, could it be that they want to frame this one? Your Highness is right. Qinglan raised her brows and said, But that palace maid used to be someone from Li Shi's palace. If Imperial Concubine Li sets us up, it might be troublesome. Palace maid? The Empress frowned and said, Isn't Nanmo the one investigating this matter? Lord Song seems to be assisting from the side. Qinglan explained, The one truly investigating this matter is that palace maid called Luo Qingchen. He. The next second, the Empress let out a cold laugh and said, Then it's even easier. Your Highness, please instruct. Hasn't she already left the palace? The Empress' cold eyes narrowed and her lips curled into a faint smile. Since she chose to leave, then make sure she never comes back to the Forbidden City. It just so happens that the Emperor went to Qingdeng Temple to pray for the Empress Dowager. This one has the final say in the palace. Yes, Your Highness. This servant understands. After receiving Consort Ro's permission, Luo Qingchen changed her clothes and left the palace. Lulikang was quite a distance away from the Forbidden City. When Luo Qingchen arrived at Lulikang, it was already evening. She was soon able to learn the whereabouts of the carpet from the waiter, thanks to the proper payment. That day, the manager brought back a particularly gorgeous carpet. I thought it was expensive, but she actually told me to throw it away, and throw it as far away as possible. Luo Qingchen frowned and said, "Did you lose it?" "Of course." The shop assistant said, "The manager has a bad temper. If I don't throw him away, I'm afraid I won't be able to continue working here." "Where did you throw it? Isn't there a forest full of swamps near Qingdeng Temple?" "I just threw it here." "Do you remember where it is?" The shop assistant thought for a moment and said, "I don't dare to go too deep either. It should be the forest in the east. I ran away as soon as I threw it. No one has entered that place for decades, so it should still be there." "Thank you." Luo Qingchen placed the silver on the table and said, "Little brother, please don't tell anyone about what happened today. I took the money to eliminate the disaster." The shop assistant weighed the silver and said, "Miss, don't worry." Luo Qingchen didn't dare to waste time and immediately walked towards the forest. Chapter 29:13. In the woods not far from Qingdeng Temple, the air was filled with miasma. Coupled with the bad weather tonight, the surrounding scene was even more unclear. Luo Qingchen suddenly regretted it. It was not easy to find a blanket in this weather. If she had known, she would have come during the day. However, there were too many people during the day, so it was more inconvenient. So she felt that she had to do it at night. In the east, there was a swamp in the woods. If she had not known this place in advance, she was afraid that she would have fallen into the mud. Using the exquisite ring as a flashlight, she lit up the surroundings. She began to search from the east intersection, but she did not even find the footprints of a person. Not to mention the carpet. Luo Qingchen stood in the same place and frowned, murmuring, "Could it be that the man has been bribed?" Just as she was deep in thought, a coarse shout rang out, and the surroundings instantly lit up with a little bit of fire. "Don't let him run away. Otherwise, when he returns to the Forbidden City, all of our heads will be gone." "Boss, don't worry. He is poisoned and can't run far. He will die today." There seemed to be a certain distance between the other side and her. If the leader had not shouted too loudly, she might not have heard it. Were they sent by the murderer who killed Brother Ba? It shouldn't be poisoned? But she was not poisoned. Then who was this group of people chasing? Listening to the rough voice, it should be someone from the palace. Everyone's heads would be gone, which proved that this person's identity and status must not be low. Luo Qingchen frowned and walked in the direction of the voice. Her footsteps were very light, but she still hid very well when she was close to the light. "Boss, there is blood here. Look carefully, he must be nearby." Luo Qingchen narrowed her eyes and looked around. The next second, her eyes fell on a rock not far away. If he wanted to hide in this place, it was probably the only place left. Found. Just as Luo Qingchen was about to move in the direction of the rock, one of the men in black found her at the same time. In the blink of an eye, she followed the light of the fire and saw the figure of the person they were talking about. He was wearing a dark green robe, and the moonlight shone on his handsome face. His face was pale, and his right hand was covering his chest. There was a faint trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. However, his aura was different from that of an ordinary person. It was as if just by standing there casually, his entire body carried the aura of a king. "You can't run." The leader of the group held a broadsword and said in a rough voice, This world should change its master. Luo Qingqin's heart trembled slightly. Change of ownership, change of ownership, change of ownership. She closed her eyes and began to recall her days in Shihe Palace. Imperial concubine Li could not be considered to be favored, thus the emperor did not come to Shihe Palace very often. As servants, as long as the emperor came, imperial concubine Li would have them withdraw, unwilling to allow them to see the emperor. Because of this, in the world of the body's original owner, imperial concubine Li hated the palace maid that she had raised for many years because of the emperor's drunkenness and did not hesitate to demote her to the laundry department. Your Majesty, in the next second, Luo Qingqin suddenly opened her eyes and muttered unconsciously. The youth in front of her that was being attacked by over 20 men in black was actually the current emperor. That will depend on whether or not you have the ability. A cold voice sounded, carrying with it the aura of an emperor. Although he had been poisoned, he did not retreat in the slightest. Chapter 29:14. In the next second, before she could react, the leader of the black-clothed men roared, "Attack!" Luo Qingqin did not have time to think. She casually tore off a piece of cloth from the brocade on her body and used it as a veil to cover her face. It was rumored that the current emperor was extremely smart. If she could still remember his appearance, the emperor must have an impression of her. This was one of the reasons. Since these black-clothed men knew her identity, then they must be people from the palace to a large extent. It was possible that they were nobles, generals, and ministers. This was the second reason. Therefore, before she could figure out what was going on, it was better for her to hide a little. Hiss, the sound of a long sword being unsheathed was heard. Without saying a word, Luo Qingqin appeared in front of Fengyu with the Fengwu sword in her hand, as if she had descended from the sky. The current emperor, the man who always had countless power in the Forbidden City, actually needed someone to save him one day. Who are you? Are you courting death? The leader of the black-clothed men seemed a little anxious. After all, this was a desolate mountain. If a person suddenly appeared with a weapon, it was inevitable that a second person would appear. They were trying to assassinate the emperor. If they were exposed, it would be a felony that would implicate their entire family. Don't look, Luo Qingqin sneered and said, I'm alone. Looking at the black-clothed man who kept looking around with an ugly expression, Luo Qingqin could not help but feel that it was especially funny. It seemed that even desperados were still very afraid of death. It was as if the one who died today was not Fengyu, then everyone present, including their entire family. I think you're courting death. The black-clothed man roared angrily and swung the broadsword in his hand in the direction of Luo Qingqin. Miss! Fengyu grabbed her sleeve and wanted to pull her behind him. Little did he know that the moment his hand touched her sleeve, Luo Qingqin used a small qinggong to face the enemy head-on. This was the first time she had faced someone she had never met before and directly took his head. It was not because she was cruel and did not give them a chance, but because these people knew very well in their hearts. If Fengyu did not die here today, then they would die here. Therefore, even if they fought to their last breath, they would not back down. Luo Qingqin probably understood this point, so she killed them in one move and showed no mercy. Hiss! The black-clothed men present saw their leader's head fall off just like that, and everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. The other party's movements were so fast that they did not see it to see him clearly. Who are you? Who I am isn't important, the important thing is. Luo Qingqin said with a cold laugh, will you stop? No, it's impossible for us to stop. Another black-clothed man stood up and said, now that the leader is dead, everyone listen to me. Kill this unknown person and Fengyu together. We have no way out. They have to die, let's attack together. There are so many of us, why should we be afraid of them? He. Luo Qingqin couldn't help touching her ear when she heard these bold words and said, I say, can you guys stop, can you all come together? I won't hold back, and you don't need to. Kill. In the blink of an eye, a group of people charged forward. Luo Qingchen narrowed her cold eyes, and in her white clothes, she passed through the black-clothed people with the phoenix dance sword in her hand. Seeing blood, she moved very quickly. In a short while, there were only a few black-clothed men left. Chapter 29:15. However, she did not realize that Feng Yu, who was poisoned, had been kidnapped by the remaining 2 men in black. Feng Yu's expression was still very ugly, but his deep eyes were filled with unknown emotions. At this moment they landed firmly on her body. "You don't come over. If you come over again, I'll kill him," one of the men in black threatened in a trembling voice. His feet were already trembling uncontrollably. If it was an ordinary threat now, Luo Qingchen would not be afraid at all. After all, such a nervous person proved that he had not completely let go of life and death. He was afraid of death. Luo Qingchen eliminated his accomplices too quickly. She let him know that if he did not take action, he would probably report to the King of Hell like them. If such a person who had not completely let go of life and death, if he was agitated, he would die together with Feng Yu. The risk was too great. She did not dare to gamble. Luo Qingchen shrugged and said with a chuckle, "What do you want?" Her relaxed tone could make the other party not seem so nervous to a certain extent. The man in black said with a trembling voice, "Let me go and forgive my sins." "I will. Do you really think that the national law doesn't exist?" Feng Yu mocked coldly. "If you fall into my hands, I will kill your entire family and exterminate your 9 generations." At this moment, Luo Qingchen's inner monologue should be, "I risked my life to save you, but you stretched your neck out for me to wipe." When the man in black heard Feng Yu's words, he could not control his emotions and roared, "For my family, I will die with you today." Time and space froze. She really did not want to use her superpower, but if she did not use it under such circumstances, the Emperor would be finished. Luo Qingchen walked forward and snatched the knife from his hand. After throwing it on the ground, she stood back in her original position. With a thump and a snap of her fingers, everything around her returned to normal. Luo Qingchen picked up the stone from the ground and threw it in the direction of the man in black. With a blood-curdling scream, the 2 men fell to the ground. Luo Qingchen quickly came to Feng Yu's side. Without saying a word, she held the phoenix dance sword and slit their throat. "Are you okay?" Luo Qingchen looked at Feng Yu's probing gaze, and a trace of doubt flashed across her eyes. With a dong sound, Feng Yu had only said one word before he fell in her direction. Hey! Luo Qingchen used all her strength to drag Feng Yu to the cave behind the rock and asked the system for the antidote. Ding! 500 exchange points has been taken for 1 antidote. According to the system, as long as there was an antidote for a poison, it could be exchanged. However, if it was a poison without an antidote, then it would be impossible to exchange for it for a long time. Luo Qingchen carefully fed Feng Yu the antidote and took out the medical kit to bandage his wound. There were many small wounds all over his body. He must have gone through a few tough battles. Logically speaking, even if he went to Qingdang Temple to pray for the Empress Dowager in a low-key manner, he should have brought his trusted aides with him. But why was he the only one left? Just as Luo Qingchen was deep in thought, Feng Yu groaned and opened his eyes slightly. "You're awake." Luo Qingchen looked at him calmly and said, "The poison has been cured. Don't worry." Feng Yu pursed his thin lips slightly and looked into her eyes. He raised his hand slightly and wanted to take off the white veil on her face. Chapter 29:16. "Miss, you saved my life. Naturally, I have to remember your appearance to repay you." Feng Yu was very direct. He had called himself "I" just now, so he naturally knew that Luo Qingchen knew his identity. He admired her. To a certain extent, it was not because she was 1 against 10, but because even under such a dangerous situation, there was no fear in her eyes. "I do know that you are the current emperor." Luo Qingchen shrugged and said, But if you want to repay me, you don't need to know what I look like. You just need to do me a favor." When Feng Yu heard Luo Qingchen say this, the expression in his eyes clearly changed. Sure enough, everyone in this world who got close to him had a purpose. No one was an exception. Do you want gold, silver, jewelry, or an important position in the palace, or to enter the palace as an imperial concubine? Feng Yu narrowed his eyes, and there was a faint light between his brows. It was hard to see it clearly. He. Luo Qingchen sneered and said, "I'm not as perfunctory as the emperor." Feng Yu narrowed his eyes, and a trace of doubt flashed across his eyes as he looked at her and said, "Then what do you want?" Luo Qingchen thought for a moment and said, "Actually, I really didn't want anything, but since the emperor asked, I don't want you to feel like you owe me." Hearing this, the corners of Feng Yu's mouth twitched and he said, "Just tell me what you want." After going in such a big circle, she still had something to ask for. Now, it seemed that the woman in front of him gave off a pretentious feeling. "I want a carpet." Luo Qingchen's tone was calm, but her gaze was extremely serious. In the next second, Feng Yu felt like he had slapped himself in the face. Probably because he felt that what Luo Qingchen said was too different from what he had imagined, he was actually a little angry and said, "How dare you? You are publicly humiliating me." "What?" Luo Qingchen did not react for a moment. She shrugged and said with a smile, "How am I humiliating you if I want a carpet? You want a carpet after saving me?" Feng Yu pointed his right hand at her forehead and said, "This is not considered a humiliation." "Of course this is not a humiliation." Luo Qingchen found a stone and sat down at the side. "Everyone wants different things. What you think is precious, I don't think is precious. You are really outrageous. You know that I am the current emperor, but you still use of you me in front of me. Aren't you afraid of angering me? No matter what, I am the emperor's savior." Luo Qingchen gave a soft laugh as she said with a certain look, "If the emperor kills his savior, wouldn't he be a foolish ruler? How dare you, Luo 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 to the Luo 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 Luo." Feng Yu seemed to want to say something, but he could not be bothered to argue with her. After a long time he said, "Okay. Then thank you, Your Majesty. So you are also a member of the palace?" Feng Yu looked her up and down, and finally, his gaze fell on the jade pendant on her waist. Why did this jade pendant look so familiar? Ahem. Luo Qingchen cleared her throat and felt Feng Yu's gaze. She hurriedly hid the jade pendant in her clothes and said, "Whether I am a member of the palace or not is not important. What is important is that Your Majesty does not forget the agreement between us." Chapter 29:17. Luo Qingchen frowned, and a hint of worry flashed across her eyes. Could it be that the emperor was so bored that he would really investigate who she was? Wasn't the emperor reviewing memorials every day and caring about military matters? "Looking at your expression, you're really afraid that I'll find you." Feng Yu sneered and said, "Didn't you say that you're my savior? If I kill you, I'll be a fatuous ruler?" Luo Qingchen laughed dryly and said, "This servant was insensible just now. If I've offended Your Majesty in any way, please forgive me." "Humph. Io. Feng Yu waved his hand and said, "It's better not to flatter me like this." Luo Qingchen looked at his expression and could not help but roll her eyes and said, "Why are you so troublesome? You can't do this and you can't do that. Could it be that you like to listen to flattery? Of course. I can't stand to hear the truth." "Hypocrite." Luo Qingchen made a face and said, "Your Majesty, you should sleep early. You just took the antidote and your body is still very weak. It's difficult to walk out of this forest in such a dark night." Feng Yu replied faintly and closed his eyes. Luo Qingchen could not be bothered with him. After carefully hiding the jade pendant, she fell asleep. She had a dreamless night. When she opened her eyes again, it was already the next morning. After she escorted Feng Yu to the Forbidden City, she went to Lulikang to wait. Feng Yu was very fast. Half an hour later, Eunuch Du, who was beside him, came with an imperial edict to search for the whereabouts of the carpet. The young man who gave her directions yesterday was so scared that his face turned pale. He lay on the ground and trembled. Luo Qingchen walked in front of him and squatted down slightly. I advise you not to waste our time. Otherwise, what happened yesterday? I know where it is, follow me. Luo Qingchen nodded at Eunuch Du, and a few young eunuchs followed the young man in. When they came out again, the little eunuch was holding a brightly colored carpet in his hand. Miss, is this the carpet? Eunuch Du presented her to her, his expression and actions extremely respectful. Last night, His Majesty was attacked by an assassin at Qingdeng Temple. Everyone in the imperial court was in a state of panic. The young lady in front of him was the Emperor's savior. Eunuch Du had been by the Emperor's side for many years, so he naturally knew what the Emperor valued. Or perhaps someone he valued. Yes. Luo Qingchen took the carpet and smelled it. Her face was instantly covered with a layer of frost. Alum. Although the carpet had been cleaned, the smell of alum still lingered on it. Sephora flavescens, preserved durian, alum. In the next second, her face instantly paled, and she frowned. As expected, half an hour later, Luo Qingchen changed her clothes and returned to Yixian Palace. Yo, you still know to come back. Vanilla was the first to walk up and question her. Luo Qingchen didn't even look at her as she directly kneeled down to greet Consort Ro. Nyang, please have Vanilla leave. This servant has something to report. Consort Ro was stunned. She naturally knew what Luo Qingchen wanted to report. But why did she have to send Vanilla away? Was this matter related to her? Vanilla, you leave first. Nyang, leave. Consort Ro loudly reprimanded, scaring Vanilla into taking a step back with a pale face. Yes, Nyang. Chapter 29:18. In the next hour, Luo Qingchen told Consort Ro about her bold hypothesis and careful verification. After Consort Ro heard this, her expression changed greatly and she almost fainted. Luo Qingchen sighed deeply and said, Nyang, this matter is not Nyang's fault. Blame this consort, how can you not blame this consort? Consort Ro bit her lip tightly as tears dripped down her face. If this consort hadn't raised a jackal by her side, Fengji wouldn't have left this consort. It's all this consort's fault. It's all this consort's fault. Nyang shouldn't be sad right now. Luo Qingchen slowly raised her eyes and said, Instead, you should think of a way to obtain evidence of the jackal and the mastermind. This consort wants to expel that jackal from the palace. No. Luo Qingchen shook her head and said, We still need to use her to bait the mastermind. In the evening, Luo Qingchen had just walked out of Consort Ro's palace. Vanilla was angrily standing not far away, desperately rolling her eyes at her. The palace maid Su hurriedly walked over and said, Qingchen, Vanilla is very angry. Don't provoke her today. Luo Qingchen nodded and deliberately raised her voice. Su, Nyang orders you to go to the Ministry of Internal Affairs and find out which palace has received alum recently. Alum? In the next second, there was a dong sound and the flower pot in Vanilla's hand shattered on the ground. All right, I'll go now. Su found it strange and cutely scratched her head before heading to the Ministry of Internal Affairs. Luo Qingchen glanced at Vanilla from the corner of her eyes before leaving in another direction. At this time, Vanilla was immediately heading to Flying Flower Palace on a small path to warn the Empress. Luo Qingchen brewed a pot of tea for Consort Ro and said, Nyang can go find the Emperor. We'll catch a turtle in a jar. Qing Lan Jiejie, please report that I want to see the Empress. Vanilla said with a nervous expression, I have something to report. It's you. Qing Lan glanced at him and said, Just you wait. Not long after, Vanilla entered the soaring flower palace to inform the Empress about Ming Fan. The Empress took a sip of tea and said, "This Empress has never received any fan from the Ministry of Internal Affairs." "What do you mean by this?" Vanilla's face instantly turned pale. He looked at the Empress and said, "Your Majesty, Vanilla is working for you. Your Majesty, you can't just cross the river and demolish the buildings." Slap! A heavy slap landed on Xiangxiao's face. Qing Lan looked at her and said, "You hate your master and want to murder your brother. You actually dare to slander the Empress. How audacious! Are you all done quarreling?" A dignified voice slowly sounded. Everyone knelt and said, "We respectfully request your Majesty's safety. Consort Ro came to report to me that someone murdered my prince." Feng Yu looked at the Empress and said, "Could this matter really be related to the Empress?" Consort Ro's eyes were filled with tears. She pursed her lips and looked at Vanilla with heartache. "This one usually dotes on you so much, but you actually, Your Majesty. Your Majesty, it has nothing to do with me. I was forced by the Empress." Vanilla knelt on the ground and hugged the Empress's calf. The Empress kidnapped this servant's parents and forced this servant to do this. Chapter 29:19. How could the Empress not know? Luo Qingchen cleared her throat, she lowered her voice and said, "Alum is a kind of thing that will quickly burn the air when mixed with red sandalwood. Little Agu ate highly nutritious Sephora and fiery durian when he had a high fever. Naturally, his condition will not improve. If it is difficult to breathe and there is not enough air, it will easily cause heart failure." Heart failure? Feng Yu seemed to have heard a brand new word. He looked her up and down and felt that she was a little familiar. Luo Qingchen shook her head slightly and said, "It probably means suffocation. People with a high fever were different from ordinary people. If an ordinary person was in an environment with bad air, they would only feel stuffy. However, if a person with a high fever was in an environment with no ventilation, once they could not breathe properly, it would easily cause pressure to the heart. In addition, eighth brother was young, it was very easy to cause death. Men, take this palace maid away and interrogate her strictly." Feng Yu glanced at the Empress and said, "Whether or not there is a prince who plotted to kill me, we will know after asking. I have done well. Your Majesty, please judge clearly." The Empress's expression was indifferent. There was not a trace of nervousness. In fact, she had already been exposed when she inquired about the blanket. The Empress was able to get to where she was today. She definitely had her own ability. She was not someone who could be easily defeated without any real evidence. "Thank you, Your Majesty, for making the decision for me. Consort Ro, don't worry. I will definitely make the decision for you." It had to be said that Feng Yu looked especially dignified when he wore the dragon robe. His handsomeness was different from Song Nanmo's. He belonged to the very domineering and possessive type. "For Your Majesty to care so much for me, if Feng Ji is still alive, he must. Let's not talk about this anymore. We will have children in the future. You have to recover well." Feng Yu gently stroked her hand and said, "Send Consort Ro back to Yixian Palace." The moment his voice fell, his gaze fell on Luo Qingchen. His half-narrowed eyes seemed to be probing, but also seemed to want to say something, but in the end, he did not say anything. Luo Qingchen hurriedly bowed and said, "Yes, Yixian Palace." When the palace maid Susu heard this, she said emotionally, "So Vanilla is this kind of person. I thought she just had a bad temper. I didn't expect." Actually, you can't blame her for this. After all, the Empress controlled her parent. She couldn't do anything. Consort Ro shook her head and said, "It's this consort who doesn't know her well enough. Nyang Nyang has done a lot, there's no need to blame yourself." Luo Qingchen poured a cup of tea for her and said, "It's a pity that we won't be able to topple the Empress this time. Are you still not used to this?" Susu asked doubtfully. "Didn't Vanilla confess? It's one thing for Xiangtsao to plead guilty, but she's from Yishuan Palace. Maybe Her Highness asked her to frame the Empress. Luo Qingchen pursed her lips and said, "Her hands are clean. I can't trace it back to her." When Susu heard this, she was stunned for a moment and said, "Then didn't we do all this for nothing?" "That's not it. Don't look at how calm the Empress looks on the surface, but His Majesty is already suspicious of her." Luo Qingchen's eyebrows moved slightly and said, "You can't kill a tiger, but you can peel off a layer of its skin." "Will she really be peeled off a layer of her skin?" Consort Ro's eyes were still red. She bit her lip and said, "She killed my Fengji. If she doesn't die, I won't be satisfied." Chapter 29:20. After a sleepless night, she heard the news from the imperial clan court early the next morning. Xiang Cao had committed suicide in prison. Now that there was no evidence, the Empress was a step faster and reached her hand into the imperial clan court. Feng Yu was furious and killed 2 guards, but he was unable to carry out the next step of the investigation. Concubine Ro fell ill from anger and the emperor quickly summoned an imperial physician to treat her. Song Nanmo also entered the palace. "Elder sister's health is not good. Take care of her and pay attention to her rest." Song Nanmo looked at her and said, "Don't investigate the Empress any further. She has the ability to kill people in the imperial clan court, which means that you won't be able to find her. You might even fall into her trap. The Empress has arrived." Luo Qingchen looked at Song Nanmo and helplessly shook her head. You really have a crow's mouth. Whatever you say comes true. The Empress' condition hasn't been good these past 2 days, and today there was news of Xiang Cao dying in the imperial clan court. This Empress, she has ill intentions. Don't worry, I'm here. He seriously looked into her eyes. His right hand gently took her wrist and pulled her behind him. Luo Qingchen did not forget to mutter in a small voice, "Lord Song is really cute. It's like I don't need to bow if you pull me behind you." Ding, affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 40%. This servant greets the Empress. "There's no need for that," the Empress said with a face full of spring. "I heard that concubine Ro's little sister was sick, so this one came to see her. Although she misunderstood this one still cares about her." "Wow." The girl standing behind her fixed her gaze on Song Nanmo. She was quick-witted and delicate, and her pair of bright eyes were twinkling. "This is the Empress Dowager's favorite niece. She has been outside the palace since she was young. She just entered the Forbidden City a few days ago and is visiting concubine Ro on behalf of the Empress Dowager." The Empress said with a faint smile, What are you looking at? You're dazed." "No. Nothing." Fang Yin shyly lowered her head as a look of admiration flashed in her eyes and her face turned slightly red. Luo Qingchen slightly knit her brows and looked over Fang Yin. The supporting female lead of this world had finally appeared. Since he was able to look after Consort Ro on behalf of the Empress Dowager, his status was definitely not low. In the next second, Song Nanmo bowed and said, "Elder sister is sick in bed. Your Majesty, please don't go in to avoid being infected by her illness." Song Nanmo's words were still polite, but the hostility in his tone was obvious. Empress." Before the Empress finished speaking, Fang Yin interrupted her and said, "Since Consort Ro is sick, let's not disturb her rest. Look at you, this consort has finally seen through your thoughts." The Empress was a little hesitant. After all, if Fang Yin took a fancy to Song Nanmo and married him, wouldn't it increase the status of the Song family in the harem? But, looking at Song Nanmo's eyes, he didn't seem to be interested in this beautiful little girl. She had been in the harem for a long time, so she could see through the affairs between men and women at a glance. "I didn't." Fang Yin bit her lips and shyly looked up at Song Nanmo. "Are you Consort Ro's younger brother, Lord Song?" "Yes." Song Nanmo coldly replied, "Greetings to Miss Fang." No need. Fang Yin hurriedly waved her hand and said, "I'll send the Empress back first and then come find you." I still have to go to the imperial study to find the emperor, so there's no need. Song Nanmo decisively refused without any hesitation. The empress hurriedly said, is considered half a princess in the palace, Lord Song. This servant will still go to the imperial study to find the emperor. Princess doesn't need to come find me. Song Nanmo changed his words, but his tone didn't change. Chapter 29-21. Fang Yin's face was a bit ugly. After all, she had been doted on by the Empress Dowager since she was young. No matter who saw her, they would flatter her and protect her. But now that she had been decisively rejected, naturally she couldn't put down her face. But no matter what, she had to act sensible and dignified in front of Song Nanmo. Since Lord Song is busy, Fang Yin, will pay you a visit next time. Fang Yin bowed and revealed a faint smile. Song Nanmo didn't say anything and just nodded as he watched them leave. After they left, Luo Qingchen didn't forget to gently pat Song Nanmo's shoulder and tease him. Sir Song really isn't moved by beauties. Could it be that you like men? Qingchen, you. Song Nanmo looked away and his voice was a bit angry as he said, Think about it, do I like men? Sir Song is angry? Luo Qingchen pursed her lips into a faint smile and said, You don't seem like someone who would get angry. In her eyes, Song Nanmo was always polite no matter when or where. Even when facing Fang Yin who he didn't like, he was still very polite. I still have to go to the royal study. You don't need to investigate little brother's matter. But, be good. Song Nanmo slightly knit his brows and said, If the Forbidden City makes a single mistake, everything will be lost. If you want to take down the Empress, it won't be easy. Luo Qingchen saw him knit his brows like an old man and could only give a slight nod. I understand. Song Nanmo saw that she finally agreed and turned to leave. But when he walked to the door, he didn't forget to take a look back. There was a faint glow in those deep eyes that didn't disappear for a long time. Ding, affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 50%. Luo Qingchen standing there couldn't help giving a faint smile. Song Nanmo, Song Nanmo. He really was a youth who put everything in his heart, including liking. With a gentle breeze, the maple leaves on both sides slowly fell down. It seemed like winter was coming. In the 3 months after Xiangsao's death, the Empress had been very well behaved and did not find trouble with Consort Ro. Or it could be said that there was nothing on Consort Ro that could threaten her. During these 3 months, Song Nanmo would visit Yixian Palace whenever he was free. He knew that she was a glutton and would always bring a lot of delicious pastries. 2 or 3 daily things felt ordinary, but each one of them warmed her heart. I brought you taro and osmanthus cake today. Song Nanmo looked at her and said, Why do I feel that you have gained weight recently? Luo Qingchen glared at him and said, You're the fat one. All the women in your family are fat. You mean to say that Her Highness Consort Ro is also fat? Song Nanmo curled his lips into a smile, his eyes carrying a faint trace of indulgence. Nyang doesn't count. Luo Qingchen took a piece of pastry and put it in her mouth. Nyang is a member of the imperial family. But in the future, there might be more than one woman in our family. When he said this, his words were filled with deep emotion, and there was a deep meaning in his words. Luo Qingchen could understand most of it. Ding, affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 60%. When I passed by the embroidery workshop today, I found that the winter clothes made this year were not suitable for you. I asked a maid to make one for your darling. Song Nanmo pursed his lips and said, I don't know if you like it or not. Chapter 29-22. There was a snow-white pleated moon dress in the box that was finely made. Although it was a palace dress, it was very elegant. She looked up and looked into Song Nanmo's eyes. He said, Happy birthday. How did you know? I can know if I want to know. Song Nanmo looked at her face and slowly said, Qingchen, you what? Actually Luo Qingchen knew what he wanted to say, but seeing his hesitant appearance, she wanted to tease him, which was very cute. "It's nothing, I had Su bring the birthday meal I prepared for you to your room." Song Nanmo raised his right hand and wanted to pat her head, but it stopped in midair. Luo Qingchen grabbed his wrist and placed it on her head as she said, "Thank you Sir Song for your gift, I like it very much." Ding, affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 70%. When winter came, Luo Qingchen changed into new winter clothes, but she forgot to put on the jade pendant she took from Song Nanmo. Song Nanmo came to Yixian Palace and found this. He grabbed her wrist and slightly knit his brows as he looked at her and said, "Why didn't you put on the jade pendant?" His strength was very gentle. Even if he was a bit angry, he didn't use any strength as he was afraid of hurting her. "Oh, the jade pendant," Luo Qingchen suddenly said. "I changed into new clothes and forgot to take it off." "You can forget this?" Song Nanmo softly let go of her hand as a trace of disappointment appeared in his eyes. It was like he had lost something important in his life. Even the air was filled with a trace of sadness. "Sir Song has also forgotten what you promised me." Luo Qingchen pursed her lips and said in a proud voice, "Compared to me, Sir Song's failure to keep an appointment is much more serious." "When have I failed to keep an appointment?" Song Nanmo knit his brows and looked at her like an old man, with eyes filled with doubt. "Ahem." Luo Qingchen cleared her throat and said in detail, "When I first met Song Darren, I took Song Darren's jade pendant without asking. His Excellency said that he would choose a better jade pendant to exchange with me, but more than 3 months have passed. Where is the jade pendant that Lord Song exchanged?" "You?" Luo Qingchen. Song Nanmo's ears turned red almost instantly. He looked at her with anger written all over his face and said, "You know what I mean. Why do you still say such things?" Hearing this, Luo Qingchen raised her eyebrows slightly and a faint smile appeared on her lip. Song Nanmo was special. No matter who he was compared to, his personality was the most unique. He had never dared to hold her hand casually. No matter how angry he was, he would never do anything domineering to her. However, this kind of personality did not mean that he was weak. He just had his own self-discipline and self-reflection. In the imperial court, he was the emperor's right-hand man. In the inner court, he was the object of admiration of all the unmarried women in the palace. This person always felt that he was too dazzling. As a result, she always liked to tease him and deliberately make him angry. Occasionally, she would increase his affection and see how he cared about her. "So, what is Song Darren's intention?" Luo Qingchen tilted her head and a faint smile appeared on her lips. Chapter 29-23. Luo Qingchen pretended to suddenly understand and said, "So the person that Sir Song is thinking of is me?" His brows trembled and his hands held her shoulders as he seriously said, "Yes, it's you." Ding, affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 80%. This kind of day, if they could live like this forever, how good would that be? But between them, there was Fang Yin who came in, making them helpless. She seemed determined to get close to Song Nanmo, running to Yixian Palace every 2 to 3 days. She even brought gifts for Concubine Ro from time to time. After being together for a long time, Luo Qingchen felt that Concubine Ro was indeed a kind person, but her personality was a bit too weak. When Fang Yin first came, she thought that she was a spy that the Empress or the Empress Dowager wanted to place by her side. But then she found that she always came at a specific time. And this specific time was the time that her little brother Song Nanmo came to see her. "Concubine, then I'll be going back first. You have to wear this coat often," the Empress Dowager said. It was very warm. Fang Yin had a fawning look as she looked up at Song Nanmo from time to time. Song Nanmo's eyes were calm from beginning to end, not giving her any response. Concubine Rose said with a smile, "This concubine is very happy, thank you Princess Yin for the coat." Concubine doesn't need to be this polite. She shyly touched her face and said, "In is happy as long as you're happy." After Fong Yin left, concubine Ro gave a sigh. She looked at Song Nanmo and said, "This Princess Yin is interested in you, don't tell big sister that you can't see it." "Nanmo has no intention." Song Nanmo decisively replied, "I'll come see big sister at the end of the month next month." You. Concubine Ro said with a helpless smile, "As your big sister, how could I not know that you don't have any feelings for her? But she is the Empress Dowager's favorite person, so I'm afraid you can't reject her." "If I'm not willing to, the Empress Dowager can't force me." Song Nanmo slightly raised his brows and said, "Big sister doesn't need to say anything, I won't marry Fong Yin." "Poochie." Concubine Ro couldn't help giving a soft laugh. "You think big sister can't see who you're thinking about? Big sister, do you still remember the jade pendants that Empress gave us each?" Consort Ro looked at him and said, "I haven't seen you wear it for a long time. Who did you give it to?" "I." Song Nanmo looked at Concubine Ro and said, "Since elder sister knows that my heart belongs to someone, you should respect my decision. If you don't tell me, it means that the person you're thinking of is not compatible with our Song family." "Sister," Consort Ro took a sip of tea and said, "Qinchin, right?" Song Nanmo looked into Consort Ro's eyes and said while kneeling, "Sister, I want to marry Qinchin. I can't marry anyone else. How can everything go according to plan in life? You are the hope of the Song family, the hope of Ma and Nyang." Consort Ro looked at him and said, "Even if sister wants to help you, it's still—" "Sister, isn't your jade pendant still on you?" Song Nanmo looked at her and said, "I know that the Emperor is not the person in your heart, Nanmo." Consort Ro immediately interrupted him and said, "Do you want all the heads of our Song family to fall to the ground with you? How can you say such words that insult the dignity of the imperial family?" Chapter 29-24. Consort Ro held her forehead with her right hand and waved her left hand. "Go back first. Let sister think." At the same time, the Hall of Supreme Harmony. Eunuch Du replied, "This servant has already investigated more than half of the girl that His Majesty asked this servant to investigate. This servant has already investigated all the palace maids and mistresses in the harem. That day no one left the palace." "Impossible." Feng Yu frowned slightly and said, "She's definitely someone from the harem. Are you sure that you've checked all the palace maids?" "Unless it was a palace maid from one of the Emperor's 4 imperial concubines who took the imperial concubine's order out of the palace, then this servant may not be able to find the record." Eunuch Du asked, "Do you think it could be the daughter of a noble family?" "Impossible. This person must be in the harem, and it's impossible for her to be a palace maid of the Empress's Flying Flower Palace." Feng Yu thought for a moment and said, "She asked me for a carpet to prove Imperial Concubine Ro's innocence. Then this person must have a close relationship with Imperial Concubine Ro, or even, Your Majesty, do you remember something? They might even be people from Yixian Palace." Feng Yu looked out of the window and narrowed his eyes. "Let's go to Yixian Palace." "Yes, Your Majesty." This was the first snow after winter. Consort Ro slowly got up and opened the box by the bed. Inside the box was a suet jade pendant with a large character engraved in the middle, Ro. She did not give this jade pendant to Feng Yu. On the surface, she was telling herself that the Emperor had everything and did not need her jade pendant. In fact, this jade pendant was her final obsession. Marrying into the palace as an imperial concubine was not her choice. It was because the Song family wanted to stabilize their position in the imperial court. Marrying her into the palace was like a gift to the Emperor. Sigh. After an unknown period of time, she squatted down and gripped the jade pendant tightly in her hand. She sighed deeply and said, "Do you think I should at least do my best to make Nanmo happy? At the very least, someone in the Song clan must have their original dream fulfilled." "What is Consort Ro doing?" A dignified and cold voice slowly sounded from behind her. Consort Ro froze. With a thud, the jade pendant fell to the ground. This concubine pays respects to the emperor. Her face was filled with panic, and she didn't even dare to bend down to pick up the jade pendant on the ground. Consort Ro's body hasn't fully recovered yet. It's fine to just sit. Feng Yu's gaze fell on the jade pendant on the ground. A sharp glint flashed across his deep, ink-like eyes. This jade pendant. Just as the emperor was about to reach out and pick up the jade pendant, Concubine Ro was one step ahead of him and hurriedly said, "It's all trivial things. This concubine will put it away." "Wait," Feng Yu stopped her and said, "Why is Consort Ro so nervous? Show me the jade pendant." "Your Majesty." Consort Ro took a deep breath, swallowed her saliva, and said, "Yes." When she personally handed the jade pendant to the emperor, she was no longer as nervous. After all, the person she wanted to give the jade pendant to was no longer around. Feng Yu narrowed his eyes and began to recall the scene in the cave that day. The jade pendant, he saw, was almost exactly the same as the jade pendant in his hand, but that jade pendant, the word engraved on it was, "Mo." Replying to Your Majesty, this was given to this concubine by this concubine's mother before this concubine entered the palace. Consort Ro sat up straight and said, "They're all unremarkable little jade pendants. Why would Your Majesty take a fancy to them?" Chapter 29-25. Concubine Ro was stunned for a moment. Her eyes were filled with confusion as she looked at Feng Yu and asked, "How did Your Majesty know?" Feng Yu's dark eyes suddenly lit up at this moment. The person who saved him under Qingdeng Temple that day was indeed Concubine Ro's person. "I want to see her." Feng Yu's eyes were filled with desire. His deep eyes were filled with a burning fire. Concubine Ro was stunned and hurriedly said, "This belongs to the Song family. Other than this concubine, Nanmo also has one." She did not dare to deceive the emperor. The emperor must be very familiar with the jade pendant since he came to ask her. If she deceived the emperor, she would be discovered very quickly. "Nanmo." Feng Yu narrowed his eyes and said, "Du Sanbao, return to the Hall of Supreme Harmony and summon Song Nanmo into the palace." Eunuch Du immediately echoed, "Set up a fight in the Hall of Supreme Harmony." "Your Majesty, what's wrong?" Concubine Ro looked at Feng Yu nervously and asked, "Did Nanmo do something wrong?" Guessing the emperor's intentions was a skill that the imperial concubines in the imperial harem had to learn. Concubine Ro could see from Feng Yu's eyes that there was a ball of fire in his eyes. As for the specific reason, she couldn't guess. However, she knew very well that Song Nanmo had already given the jade pendant to Luo Qinchen and wanted to spend the rest of his life with her. Now, what exactly happened? The imperial harem is not allowed to interfere in politics. Concubine Ro should know that there are some things that you shouldn't ask too much. Feng Yu glanced at her and said, "I'll come and see you another day." "Your Majesty." "Your Majesty." Feng Yu did not look back and strode out of Yixian Palace. He could not be wrong about the jade pendant. The jade pendant he saw on her that day was almost the same as Concubine Ro's jade pendant. However, the words engraved in the middle were different. Then why was Song Nanmo's jade pendant on her? Sitting in front of the desk in the Hall of Supreme Harmony, Feng Yu's mind kept thinking about this matter and could not disperse for a long time. He did not know what was wrong with him. He only felt that there was something lingering in his heart. It made him depressed. It made him restless, it made him breathless. "Greetings to Your Majesty." Song Nanmo had just arrived at the main hall when he felt that the atmosphere around him was unusually solemn. The emperor would never summon him to the Hall of Supreme Harmony so late. Unless, it was a very important matter. No need for formalities. Feng Yu raised his right hand and said, "Sit." Song Nanmo respectfully bowed and said, "Thank you, Emperor. I just came back from your sister's place. I saw that she had an exquisite jade pendant." Feng Yu looked at Song Nanmo in a probing tone and said, "Concubine Ro told us that you also have a jade pendant like that. Is that true?" Replying to your majesty. Song Nanmo's thin lips softly said, there is indeed such a thing. It's a plant that this subject's mother gave to this subject and this subject's elder sister. Song Nanmo could roughly feel that Feng Yu was testing him with every word, but he did not know why he was testing him. Could it be, this one seems to have seen you wearing a jade pendant earlier? He paused, a sharp light flashing in his eyes as he said, but this one doesn't seem to have seen you wearing it recently. Song Nanmo's brows furrowed slightly. He immediately knelt down and said, this subject has given it away. Did something happen, Your Majesty? Feng Yu looked at Song Nanmo's nervous expression. The burning fire in his eyes seemed to burn even more. Could it be that the woman who saved him was related to Song Nanmo? Chapter 29-26. At this moment, Song Nanmo's face instantly turned pale. He hurriedly said, Your Majesty, please investigate clearly. She can't assassinate Your Majesty. Song Nanmo knew better than anyone what kind of person Luo Qingchen was. She was smart and meticulous. No matter how dangerous the situation was, she would always be very calm. She had no reason to kill the emperor, and it was even more impossible for her to betray the country. Feng Yu looked Song Nanmo up and down. You seem to know very well whether she can kill me or not? What's her relationship with you? Feng Yu was very direct. The world was so big, and he was the emperor. There was nothing that he could not get, nothing that he was obsessed with. Today, however, he really wanted to find out the reason why. Who was the woman who held a long sword and fought alone with more than 20 black-clothed men, the woman who saved his life? What was her relationship with Song Nanmo? Your Majesty, Song Nanmo took a deep breath and said, She is the person that Nanmo is thinking about. I originally wanted to wait until the end of Your Majesty's birthday to ask for your hand in marriage. At this moment, Feng Yu felt a buzzing sound in his head, and his mind went blank. He never thought that Song Nanmo would say these words so directly. The person he was thinking about. Why did he feel a little ridiculous? On the day I was assassinated, I saw this jade pendant. Feng Yu looked at Song Nanmo and said, Can you guarantee that she has nothing to do with this matter? Your Majesty. Song Nanmo gritted his teeth and said each word with force, I dare to guarantee with my life that Qingchen has nothing to do with this matter. Qingchen. So that was her name. Song Nanmo called her by her maiden name. It seemed that the two of them had a good relationship. I understand. You can go back first. Your Majesty, Feng Yu did not speak anymore. Eunuch Du, who was standing at the side, gave him a look and shook his head gently. The eunuchs beside the emperor were the best at guessing the emperor's thoughts. Since there were some words that the emperor did not want to hear, then there was no need to say them. I will take my leave. At the same time, Yixian Palace. Consort Ro summoned Luo Qingchen and told her what happened tonight. This consort knows that Nanmo has already given the jade pendant to you. Consort Ro sighed softly and said, He is a very stubborn person. Once he likes someone, he will definitely not change his mind easily. He told me that no matter what happens in the future, he will not have multiple wives. He has a pure heart and few desires, taking only one ladle out of 3,000. Nyang. Luo Qingchen lowered her eyes slightly and said, This servant knows that her status is not good enough for Lord Song. Luo Qingchen expressed that she knew her place. What was Song Nanmo's status? What was her status? She naturally understood that the two families were not well matched. Although it was not difficult for her to have anything she wanted, she still had to accept the identity given to her by this plain system. Some things had to be done step by step. Perhaps only then could one see the scenery along the way. It's not like that. Consort Ro shook her head and said, Actually, that silly child has already told me about the matter between you and him. Status is given by people. As long as this consort asks His Majesty to give you a better status, it won't be difficult. Even if you can't reach the upper 3 banners, you can still reach the middle three banners. Consort Ro. Chapter 29-27. Imperial concubine Ro's words were very tactful, but she understood. Nyang Nyang. Luo Qingchen took a deep breath and said, Qingchen has indeed seen the Emperor. When I left the palace that day to find evidence, I saw the Emperor being assassinated and came to save him. Imperial concubine Ro thought for a bit and her eyes shined. She muttered, since it's like this one is relieved. The Emperor left this one in a hurry and summoned Nanmo into the palace to see the Emperor. This one's heart can't be at peace no matter what. Luo Qingchen heard this and her brows furrowed even tighter. Since she had saved the Emperor, even if she wasn't rewarded, she shouldn't be punished. But Qingchen still feels it's a bit strange. Luo Qingchen's brows were tightly furrowed and her brows trembled. Perhaps this one can explain what you feel is strange. Imperial concubine Ro helplessly shook her head and said, Do you think the Emperor knows you saved him and should reward you instead of summoning Nanmo into the palace so late at night? Official Song doesn't know about this, but the Emperor does. Luo Qingchen pursed her lips and said, I'm not the one who tried to assassinate him, I'm the one who saved him. Official Song has already been in the Hall of Supreme Harmony for 4 hours. It's too strange if he's just discussing this. Imperial concubine Ro closed her eyes and the scene before her marriage slowly appeared in her mind. After a long time, she said with a bitter smile, You're so smart and your mind is so meticulous. How could you not understand what the Emperor wants to do? Luo Qingchen had trapped herself in an endless loop. Until concubine Ro said something, it was like she had woken up from a dream. Nyang Nyang's meaning is, the Emperor wants you. Imperial concubine Ro looked at her and said with a sigh, He's going around in such a big circle. He probably wants to know the relationship between you and Nanmo. Jade pendants were things that could be carried around and had the same meaning as pouches. They were both used to give to the person in one's heart. The Emperor was a smart person. When he learned from Consort Ro that Song Nanmo had a very similar jade pendant, he had already guessed the relationship between Song Nanmo and her. And the only thing he had to do was to make Song Nanmo retreat. Luo Qingchen felt her heart jump to her throat. She was extremely flustered. In the next second, Eunuch Du arrived at Yixian Palace. Pass down His Majesty's verbal order. Oh no. Consort Ro frowned and said, Nanmo should have already left the palace. Just as Consort Ro finished speaking, Eunuch Du walked in and said in a low voice, Nyang Nyang, His Majesty has decreed for Miss Qingchen to go to Taiha Hall. Luo Qingchen glanced at Consort Ro. Consort Ro held one of her hands tightly. Although he didn't say a word, the look in his eyes said it all. She told her to be careful and act according to circumstances. Don't worry, Nyang Nyang. Luo Qingchen gently patted the back of her hand and followed Eunuch Du to Taiha Hall. It was already very late at night. Heavy snow fell from the sky and filled the air with a desolate atmosphere. Taiha Hall. Feng Yu sat on a high seat and was extremely dignified. He lowered his head and read through piles of memorials. His expression was serious and solemn. This servant greets His Majesty. Luo Qingchen knelt on the ground and bowed. Her brows were still slightly furrowed. Feng Yu lowered his head, but there was an unconcealable smile at the corner of his mouth as he said, Get up. She didn't deliberately lower her voice. It was the same voice as the day they first met. Chapter 29-28. We meet again. Don't you want to say something to me? In the next second, Feng Yu slowly raised his eyes, and the corners of his mouth curled into an extremely faint smile. That day in the cave, weren't you quite talkative? Under the candlelight, if one looked closely, this girl was actually very beautiful. She was pure and lively, playful and cute, but at the same time, she did not lose her calmness and indifference. What does Your Majesty want to hear? Luo Qingchen lowered her eyes and said, This servant will say what it is. Luo Qingchen's voice was very cold. It was not entirely because of etiquette, but because Consort Ro's words had been circling in her mind. The Emperor wants you. The Emperor wants you. The Emperor wants you. Shouldn't you want me to give you some reward? Feng Yu looked at her and raised his eyebrows. After all, you are the person who saved me. Luo Qingchen narrowed her eyes and looked up at Feng Yu with absolute calmness. Will your Majesty give me whatever reward I want? Of course. Feng Yu's gaze was as deep as ink as he stared into her eyes. A monarch does not joke. This servant does have a reward that I want. Just say it. In the next second, Luo Qingchen nodded and said, This servant wants to ask your Majesty to grant a marriage and allow this servant to marry the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Works, Lord Song Nanmo. Bang, the sound of a cup shattering. All the eunuchs and palace maids around them knelt at this moment and said, Your Majesty, please calm down. Luo Qingchen closed her eyes as she knelt on the ground. Her expression was still indifferent, but she was a little terrified in her heart. At first, she did not completely believe Consort Ro's words, but in this situation she had no choice but to believe it. The Emperor wanted her. He was full of confidence, thinking that she would want gold, silver, jewelry, or even 10,000 taels of gold, and he would agree to it. He would even confer her the title of a noble after agreeing, and let her fly from a palace made to a branch to become a phoenix. From then on, she would stay in the Forbidden City for a long time. But he never expected that she would actually ask him to grant a marriage. Luo Qingchen, Feng Yu looked at her and said, If a palace maid has an affair with a guard, she will be punished severely. Are you sure what you said just now wasn't nonsense? Feng Yu was threatening her, blatantly threatening her. On the surface, she asked him to think carefully before answering. In fact, he was giving her a choice. If she chose Song Nanmo, she would die. Your servant, reporting to your Majesty, official Song has returned and said that he has something important to report. He is currently outside the Supreme Harmony Hall. The eunuch who had come to report suddenly came in and interrupted what she wanted to say. Luo Qingchen's face did not show any trace of fear. She knew that Song Nanmo must have received Consort Ro's notice before returning. She knew that he had come to find her. Let him in. Feng Yu looked at Luo Qingchen and said, I want to hear how he answers. That's a coincidence. Luo Qingchen glanced at him indifferently and nodded. Your servant also wants to know. This subject pays his respects to your Majesty. The moment Song Nanmo entered, his gaze fell on Luo Qingchen. He frowned tightly and his expression was very bad. Nanmo, just now, Consort Ro's palace maid, Luo Qingchen, wanted me to grant a marriage. Feng Yu looked at Song Nanmo and said, I really plan to punish her. Please calm down, Your Majesty. Allow this subject to say a few words. Song Nanmo frowned tightly and said, The matter is not what Qingchen said. Luo Qingchen was suddenly stunned, and a hint of surprise flashed across her eyes. If they could not share riches and honor, they should at least share weal and woe. She had 80% favorability, but Song Nanmo's words still made her heart tremble. Chapter 29-29. The most powerful move to defeat the opponent was to let Luo Qingchen know what kind of person Song Nanmo was. He was about to become the Minister of Works, and his future was boring. If he was accused of having an affair with a palace maid at this time, he would be destroying his own future. Therefore, as long as he was a little smart, he would not admit to their relationship. No, Song Nanmo shook his head, and there was a hint of gentleness in his eyes as he said, I admire her, it has nothing to do with her. At this moment, Luo Qingchen and Feng Yu's gazes fell on Song Nanmo at the same time, and their faces were filled with shock. Luo Qingchen was more touched than shocked, while Feng Yu was angry. Song Nanmo, Feng Yu looked at him angrily and clenched his fists. I want you to think carefully about every word you say. Although Song Nanmo was frowning, his eyes were very calm. He cupped his hands and lowered his eyes. I have thought very clearly. Even if it is an invitation, I should be the one asking the emperor to grant the marriage, not Qinchen. Good, good, good. Feng Yu said 3 numbers in a row. His cold eyes narrowed as he looked at them and said, Since you want to violate the rules of the palace so much, I will fulfill your wish. Men. The Empress Dowager has arrived. Luo Qinchen originally thought that it would be difficult for her and Song Nanmo to walk out of the Hall of Supreme Harmony today. However, for some reason, although she only had 80% of Song Nanmo's favorability, his words and actions at this moment made her feel especially warm. He did not seek glory and wealth, but he sought fortune and misfortune. He was so smart and was Feng Yu's study companion, so he naturally knew what Feng Yu was thinking. As a subject, he should retreat. However, he knew that if he retreated, he would definitely regret it in the future. Therefore, even if the title of a meritorious official stopped at this moment, he would never give her up. Hee, Feng Yu snorted coldly and said, The Hall of Supreme Harmony is really lively tonight. At the same time, other than the Empress Dowager, the Empress Dowager's most favored grandnephew, Fang Yin, also entered the Hall of Supreme Harmony. As soon as Fang Yin entered the room, she shook her head gently at Song Nanmo, as if indicating that no matter what she said later, he should not refute her. Song Nanmo gently looked away, and then stared steadily at Luo Qinchen. That pair of firm eyes seemed to be telling her not to be afraid, not to be afraid, not to be afraid. Fang Yin greets your majesty. Fang Yin bowed and smiled sweetly, showing a very cute appearance. No need to be so courteous. Feng Yu hurriedly stood up and looked at the Empress Dowager. Empress Dowager, Tianhan, it's already so late at night. Why are you still coming to this Hall of Supreme Harmony? If there's anything, just let me know and I'll go over. Feng Yu might always say that he liked the new and hated the old when it came to love, but he was faithful to his family. From the day he ascended the throne, the Empress Dowager had lived a peaceful life in her old age. Feng Yu was truly a filial son. Even though he was already the emperor, he was still very respectful to his mother and did not dare to overstep his boundaries. Sigh, the Empress Dowager sighed. She sat on the high seat and said, The emperor might not know, but I have always doted on Yin. She has been crying here for a long time, and I have no choice but to come and ask the emperor to make a decision. What exactly is it that makes Empress Dowager so worried? Feng Yu said respectfully, You can tell me. Chapter 29:30. When the Empress Dowager said this, even Luo Qinchen, who had always been calm, had a hint of surprise in her eyes. Her mind began to spin quickly. Why would the Empress Dowager appear here? Whose marriage was she asking the emperor to bestow? Could it be Fang Yin? This answer sounded ridiculous, but after eliminating all the impossibilities, there was only one possibility left. Fang Yin went to Yixian Palace to visit Imperial Concubine Ro at night. Imperial Concubine Ro knew that this matter would probably get out of hand, so she could only tell Fang Yin about it and think of a way to get the Empress Dowager to help. If the Empress Dowager asked Feng Yu to bestow marriage to Song Nanmo and Fang Yin, both of them might be able to survive. Empress Dowager, who are you planning to bestow marriage to? Feng Yu seemed to have understood something, and there was an unconcealable smile on the corner of his mouth. He was a smart person, so how could he not understand? The emperor also knows that I have doted on this child since she was young. The late emperor did not leave behind any princesses for me, and the only princess was wandering among the commoners. Sigh, let's not talk about it. The Empress Dowager glanced at Fang Yin and said with a kind smile, Yin can be considered half a princess. Now that she has reached the age of marriage, she told me about her sweetheart. Feng Yu raised his eyebrows and asked despite knowing the answer, Who is Princess Yin's sweetheart? In the next second, Fang Yin immediately knelt down and said, Your Majesty, Fang Yin likes the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Works and Imperial Concubine Ro's younger brother, Lord Song Nanmo. Ha 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 ha. Feng Yu laughed out loud and said, Nanmo has been fancied by countless daughters of the ministers of the previous dynasty in the past few years, but no one dared to come and bestow marriage to me. Feng Yu's words seemed to be for Fang Yin, but also seemed to be for Luo Qingchen. Hearing this, the Empress Dowager hurriedly smiled and said, I really like Yin Er. In addition, Lord Song has an upright and humble character. Lord Song's father has made countless contributions to the country. His family is illustrious, so he definitely won't let Yin Er suffer. Fang Yin, hurry up and thank the Empress Dowager. Feng Yu raised his eyebrows slightly and said with a chuckle, if it wasn't for the Empress Dowager, I would have to think twice about this marriage. After all, Lord Song has many admirers. Luo Qingchen narrowed her eyes with a touch of indifference. At this moment, other than feeling domineering, Feng Yu gave her an inexplicable feeling of hypocrisy. His words were not only reminding her, they were also reminding Song Nanmo. He had even used his identity as the supreme ruler to make a decision. Now, the Empress Dowager's most beloved princess Yin had lowered herself to ask for a marriage. If Song Nanmo refused, Du Sanbao pass down my decree. Assistant Minister of Works, Song Nanmo, is to bestow upon Princess Tong Yin. Before the word marriage could be heard, Song Nanmo knelt on the ground. His cold voice spread throughout the entire hall of supreme harmony like water. This subject is unwilling. He was unwilling to do so, even if he had to die. Ever since he was young, whether at home or in the imperial court, whether it was his relatives or friends, they all said that he was humble, upright, tolerant, outstanding, and talented. But he knew that he was actually a selfish person. However, all these years, his life had not experienced any ups and downs. There was nothing that he was obsessed with, and no one that he was obsessed with. But now, this person had appeared. By giving away the jade pendant, he had shown his sincerity. Even if he were to die, he would not let go. Chapter 29:31. He had already given Song Nanmo enough face. He had to know that no one could compete with him for the woman he liked. Everyone he liked had to love him deeply. This was a monarch, this was a king. Now, even the Empress Dowager had come out to give him a way out, but this Song Nanmo was still so stubborn. Emperor, don't be angry first. The Empress Dowager turned her head and looked at Song Nanmo, asking, why is Lord Song unwilling to accept Yin Er? According to Yin Er's status, she should be worthy of Lord Song. Replying to the Empress Dowager, Song Nanmo was still very calm. He lowered his tone and said, it's not because Princess Yin is not good, but because Nanmo already has someone else in his heart. It's very normal for a man to have 3 wives and 4 concubines. The Empress Dowager looked at him and said, although Yin Er is a princess, it doesn't mean that she will stop you from taking a concubine. Do you understand? I understand. Song Nanmo took a deep breath and said, Princess Yin is smart and smart. It's not that I'm worried that Princess Yin won't let me take a concubine. Then why? The Empress Dowager's eyes were filled with doubt. She naturally knew that the Emperor was very angry, but in fact, she did not completely understand why the Emperor was angry. Song Nanmo slowly raised his eyes and his gaze fell on Luo Qingchen. He said softly, I only need 1 wife. Perhaps if Luo Qingchen did not appear today, Princess Yin would ask the Emperor to bestow a marriage. He would accept the marriage like a central official. Then, he would have 3 wives and 4 concubines and a group of children. But when he met someone, he was willing to draw a circle on the ground for her and isolate himself from everything else. He only wanted the lamp to accompany him, and she to be by his side. Song Nanmo, Feng Yu looked at him and said, Men, drag him away and beat him 200 times until he knows his mistake. I thank your majesty for not bestowing a marriage. Song Nanmo kowtowed heavily. In the end, his gaze still fell on Luo Qingchen. It was a gaze that said, Don't worry. What a warm man. At this moment, her eyes unconsciously turned red. He was like the eternal protagonist in a story. No matter what the situation, He was always so dazzling. But at this moment, Luo Qingchen felt that she did not know what she was doing. What should she do? What could she do? This was the imperial palace. Even if he used his special ability, it was impossible to change the entire situation. Even a deity wouldn't be able to survive 200 strikes. Your Majesty. Luo Qingchen immediately kneels and says, "This servant is willing to be punished together with official song." Her voice was neither soft nor loud, but everyone in the Hall of Supreme Harmony heard it clearly. The Empress Dowager instantly understood what was going on. Fang Yin's eyes were filled with a complicated light. She was jealous of Luo Qingchen and didn't even want her to live in this world. Even if she was slightly inferior to her in terms of beauty, but in terms of identity and status, she couldn't even compare to her pinky finger. What right did she have to fight with her for Song Nanmo? But at this moment, she was worried about Song Nanmo's safety. It was impossible for Song Nanmo to survive 200 strikes. The Emperor was waiting. He was waiting for Song Nanmo to beg him. He was waiting for him to say the words "give up" on Luo Qingchen. Originally, she didn't know that if Consort Ro hadn't said that the Emperor might have taken a fancy to Luo Qingchen, she wouldn't have thought that a lowly palace maid could be doted on by the two most outstanding men in the entire Forbidden City. Chapter 29-32. Naturally, he wasn't willing to let her be punished, but he wanted to let her know. The ruler was the ruler and the minister was the minister. No matter how much they liked each other, the things he liked would always belong to him. Purring, purring, purring. Once, twice, thrice. The planks fell heavily on Song Nanmo's body, but he didn't make a single sound as he just looked at her with a faint gaze. Luo Qingchen was held back by the two eunuchs. She softly bit her lips as her eyes turned red. I've never wanted to take back the jade pendant. Song Nanmo. There are many things that I didn't have time to say. I'm filled with regret now that I think about it. His voice was trembling a bit and there were bloodstains on his dark blue clothes. It was very painful, but he still forced himself to hold on, not saying a single word of pain. 200 planks, you're taking it this easily? Luo Qingchen pursed her lips and said in a choked voice, You clearly have many choices. No. His eyes were firm as he pursed his trembling lips and said, My only choice is you. Ding, affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 90%. Perhaps it was at this moment that he finally saw through his own heart. It turned out that he could also give up everything for one person. He never thought that there would be a day like this, but he was filled with pain and happiness. I won't let you die. Luo Qingchen gritted her teeth. Her hands used strength as she broke free from the eunuch's restraints. Her gaze was eerie and carried a trace of extreme coldness as it swept across everyone present. Two of the eunuchs who were carrying out the punishment saw the look in her eyes and were immediately intimidated. They even forgot to give her a beating. Qingchen. After that, Song Nanmo grabbed her wrist and said, don't go, beg him. I won't beg him. Luo Qingchen coldly looked up and said, but I can threaten him. As soon as her voice fell, Luo Qingchen jumped out and knocked down the two eunuchs. A group of guards surrounded them. Luo Qingchen picked up the sword on the ground and stood beside Song Nanmo, as her eyes turned ice-cold. Luo Qingchen, are you crazy? Hearing this, Feng Yu rushed out of the Hall of Supreme Harmony. He looked at her angrily and said, Could it be that you want to kill the Emperor? Ah! The Empress Dowager screamed in fright. Fang Yin hurriedly stood in front of her and said, Protect the Empress Dowager! Protect the Empress Dowager! Luo Qingchen looked at Feng Yu indifferently and said, Your Majesty, do you think I don't dare? I think you're crazy. Feng Yu snorted coldly and said, What kind of place is this Forbidden City? No matter how high your martial arts are, you can't do anything. Your Majesty is right. Luo Qingchen glanced at Song Nanmo. She took a deep breath and said, Lord Song is a court official. It's normal for him to have such thoughts. If he doesn't want to marry Princess Een, your Majesty is benevolent and naturally cannot force him. What are you trying to say? I won't marry him. Luo Qingchen looked up and said, If your Majesty thinks that this won't work, then I'd rather die here with Lord Song today. Then in the eyes of the world, it would be the Emperor casually appointing a marriage, and the officials would be sentenced to death if they were unwilling. This is the act of an incapable ruler. Ding, affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 100%. For the first time, she could live and die with him. This feeling seemed to be quite good. Feng Yu clenched his fists and looked at her angrily. But the Empress Dowager was still in the Hall of Supreme Harmony. Her martial arts were indeed superb. If she really hurt the Empress Dowager, the consequences would be unimaginable. Moreover, he did not want her to get hurt. Since she had already agreed not to marry Song Nanmo, then this matter could be considered to be going according to his plan. Chapter 29:33. Guards. Feng Yu's gaze was faint as he looked at everyone. Detain Song Nanmo in the Imperial Clan Court. Come and see me after you've thought it through. Song Nanmo and Luo Qingchen both knew what Feng Yu was talking about. He wanted the two of them to leave each other willingly. One of them could promise him a bright future in the Imperial Court, while the other could promise her a meteoric rise in the harem. With just a nod, they could easily get what everyone in this world dreamed of, regardless of whether they were men or women. Unfortunately, the Emperor was heartless, but it did not mean that others were heartless. In addition, Luo Qingchen has offended her superiors and is temporarily imprisoned in Jin's palace. Feng Yu narrowed his deep eyes slightly, and a sharp light flashed in his eyes. He had time to wait for her to admit defeat to him, wait for her to become his concubine. Jin's palace. The Empress Dowager muttered these 3 words in a low voice and looked at Feng Yu in disbelief. For generations, Jin's palace was the palace where the favored concubines of the current dynasty lived. Whether it was the furnishings or the prosperity of the railings in the palace, they were all magnificent. What was the background of this palace made the Emperor do unexpected things time and time again? This servant begs your Majesty to let this servant return to Yixian Palace and pack my things. Now that they had reached a dead end, they could not implicate Consort Ro anymore. It doesn't matter if it's approved. Feng Yu looked at her clear eyes and said, I hope that the next time you beg me, it will be for something else. Luo Qingchen slowly raised her eyes, and a cold look flashed across her eyes. She suddenly felt endless regret in her heart. If she had not saved him under Qingdeng Temple, perhaps she and Song Nanmo would not have ended up in such a state. Yes. Yixian Palace. Consort Ro grabbed her hand tightly, and tears fell uncontrollably. Luo Qingchen originally wanted to appear very calm, at least not to let Consort Ro worry. But when she saw her cry, she suddenly felt a sense of empathy. It was as if you were the only one who felt wronged, but once someone who cared about you looked at you with that kind of heartache, you would feel even more wronged. Sit down first. Consort Ro took a deep breath and said, You guys can leave first. The eunuchs looked at each other, as if they didn't dare to let Luo Qingchen out of their sight. After all, they had been by the Emperor's side for so many years, so they naturally knew what kind of position this woman called Luo Qingchen had in the Emperor's heart. Do you really think that this consort would do something so disgraceful? Consort Ro looked fiercely at the eunuchs in front of her and said, My Song clan has worked so hard to have everything we have today. I still want my head. Yes, Your Highness Consort Ro. This was the first time the eunuchs had seen Consort Ro so angry. But they only saw her anger, not her loneliness and sadness. When Song Nanru was in her boudoir, what she looked forward to the most was a love that would accompany her through life and death. She had met him, but she had not been able to fulfill her promise. Nyang Nyang. Luo Qingchen pursed her lips and said in a choked voice, It's my fault. I've harmed official Song. No, it's not your fault. Consort Ro gently shook her head and said, Perhaps this is the fate of us two siblings. In the end, we will not be able to be with the person we love. Nyang Nyang's words. What do you mean? Chapter 29:34. When Song Nanru met Chi-heng, she was only 15 years old. She was in the prime of her life. Chi-heng was elegant and graceful. His 9 sentences made Song Nanru fall for his talent. Some people could live their entire life with a single glance. The moment she saw Chi-heng, she knew that he was the one she belonged to. It was a pity that the Song family was such a prestigious family. How could great General Song let his daughter marry a scholar? That was something he could not agree to. And then, Luo Qingchen seemed to be fascinated by the story. Her eyes trembled as she said, "Concubine Ro gave up?" The feeling that Concubine Ro gave her now was that she was not someone who would disobey her father's orders. Back then, this concubine's personality was completely different from now. Concubine Ro thought for a bit and said, Nan Mo's personality was probably this concubine's from back then. For her own happiness, so what if she didn't care about her life? For the rest of the story, Concubine Ro was crying as she spoke. She didn't wail loudly, but quietly shed tears. When General Song found out that his daughter had fallen in love with a scholar, he was furious. He told Chi-heng directly that if he wanted to marry his daughter, he had to gallop on the battlefield, achieve military merits, and make a name for himself. He definitely did not want a weak scholar to be his son-in-law. After Chi-heng heard this, he decided to go to the battlefield. He had to stand at a height that great General Song was satisfied with to give her happiness. It was a pity that the heavens did not follow people's wishes. He did not return with a great victory, but went missing on the battlefield. Ma told this concubine that he had become a captive of Gao Saigua. Concubine Ro shook her head and said, "I did not believe it. I would rather die than believe it. He must have worked very hard to win. Otherwise, even if he died, he would not have become a captive." Gao Saigua was the richest country other than the Celestial Empire. They were at odds with the Celestial Empire for many years and were constantly at war. "So it's like this." Luo Qingchen sighed and said. Then Concubine Ro entered the palace and became the emperor's concubine. Concubine Ro never gave away the jade pendant like Nan Mo, that is for the person you love the most. Consort Ro laughed foolishly and said, "It is already impossible for this consort to obtain happiness in this life, but this consort's younger brother and I have the same fate." "No." Luo Qingchen shook her head. "Song Nanmo and I will work hard to be happy." "Ha, difficult." Consort Ro sighed deeply. This consort has been in the palace for so many years, but this consort has never seen His Majesty so possessive of a woman. He is the Emperor of the 9 and 5. If he really wants to have you, you must remember not to resist. Otherwise, his entire family would be implicated. This is also the reason why I asked Fang Yin for help. Nyang Nyang. Luo Qingchen pursed her lips and said, "We can't go back. I came to this world to love him." As soon as she finished speaking, Susu whispered, "Qingchen, I've packed your things for you. I accidentally dropped your jade pendant just now. Do you want to check if it's broken?" Because it looked very valuable, Susu didn't dare to hide it. "Come in." Consort Ro said indifferently. This consort has already finished talking with Qingchen. She was somewhat similar to her stubbornness in the past. No matter what, she wanted them to be happy. Unfortunately, it was too uncertain.